All right. Let me know that you are here. I see in the comments. Let me know that you can hear me. I see you're here. Let me know that you can hear me. We have finished the countdown. Just threw that countdown up because I'm playing with tech stuff, and I figure if somebody watches this replay, they're going to want to know when it actually starts. Let me make sure that my audio is working. All right. Gotta mute myself. I just heard myself on the YouTube, so I know I'm working. Nicsmas 2021, aka Don't Act Like an Asshole, or Directions for Acting Like an Adult. The screen's a little bit different because I'm screen sharing on Zoom here. Let's go through a quote of the day, and then I'm going to make some introductions and kind of let you guys know what's going on. Let me make sure that our guests know that they have access. And our first friend is coming on in about 12 minutes here. Okay, so we're going to lay some groundwork here. In the meantime, here is the quote of the day. The best compliment to me is you write with your scars. Everything else is just verbiage. Okay. I hope that comes through, and hopefully I've done a good job of kind of explaining where I stand on stuff. There are things I've never experienced and I have thoughts about. People ask me all the time, what's your opinion on this thing? And I can say, like, what's your opinion on how to raise kids? And I say, well, I have an opinion, but I actually have not raised a child. I have not raised children. So those are the things we need to make explicit because we have to understand. You may say, man, Nick has some really good ideas on raising kids. You still have to keep in your head, right, the understanding that this person has never done it. Okay. And that's important. It's not to say that the person is wrong. It's not to say that it shouldn't be explored or it's not an effective insight. I'm going to talk a little bit about that because hopefully what comes through in Nicsmas is a combination of experience and some of my scars. And it's really important for today because I'm going to bring on some people that have far more scars than I do. And that's where a lot of my perspective comes from. So sometimes I pass that on. Okay. But just remember, I call it contact with reality. The best compliment to me, the most important thing to me is that we're maintaining a contact with reality and we're being explicit about it. We're also being explicit about when we have not had a contact with reality. To be fair to our viewer, to our listener, to the people we're working with, I think it's important to say, I have opinions about this, but I've never done it. So I will share my opinion, or maybe I won't share my opinion because I've never done it. Again, today we're going to talk about people that have done, we're going to talk to people that have done just about everything you can imagine. They have failed in just about every way you can imagine. They have succeeded in ways that are unfathomable. Right. So the Nicsmas lesson, as we come up on the final day, I hope this has been clear. This is what I was trying to get across. Of course, diffusion of innovations. If I come with all this content and this idea, right, and I say, this is what I want it to be, and I'm speaking to the people that I should be speaking to based on where I stand on the diffusion of innovation scale, then you know what? Let me do this. All right, we're good. If I'm talking to the people I should be talking to, it's very likely that you reinvent it. So you may not hear what I am trying to say. The worst thing that I can do is say, no, you're wrong. Listen, hear what I'm saying. It may very well be that what you're hearing has a higher efficacy in terms of diffusing the idea. So I'll tell you what I've tried to say. You may hear something different. That is why we do our 6-word updates. Now, what you hear, that doesn't mean, if it's not what I'm trying to say, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It may, again, be more effective, more efficient, or have a higher efficacy in terms of diffusion of ideas. So what we're trying to get across over the last couple of days is success, right? How do you know you're successful? Well, if you read my book and you've done the exercises, then you have a pretty good idea how I feel about it. This is what the book is about. But ultimately, it's closing the gap, getting what actually matters to you. So am I successful? It depends. I can't look at a sheet of paper of your accomplishments and tell you if you're successful or not. It's lazy. And I just don't think that's the appropriate way to measure success. You could get clear about the things that actually matter most to you, and then show me a list of your accomplishments, and we can cross-reference, and then we can maybe determine level of success. So you're actually getting the things that matter the most to you: time with your family, low anxiety, sleeping well at night, vacations, retiring your spouse, whatever it is. The Rona can't keep me from Nicsmas. I have a feeling a lot of people actually had to watch Nicsmas because they couldn't do anything else due to the Rona. So success is, as we've defined it here in the context of Nicsmas, closing the gap, getting closer to what actually matters to you. And the level of success that you achieve, or how effectively you are able to close the gap, depends entirely on how aligned your pursuits and behaviors are with your unique disposition, your priorities. Again, if anybody looks at what you've done and says that's successful, cool, pat on the back. You can hide behind that award if you want, that 2 Comma Club award or that degree or whatever it is. Or because on the flip side, somebody can say, oh, you're not successful. And in both scenarios, that person could be wrong. The person with all the awards is not necessarily more successful if they don't have the things that they want. And the person that doesn't have all the credentials and awards might be living a better life based on their unique disposition and their priorities. So the level of success that you achieve, how much you're able to close the gap, depends entirely on how aligned your pursuits stay and your behaviors stay aligned with your unique disposition. Hey, the more aligned those things are, the more successful, because you will close the gap faster with less effort. You'll get closer to things that matter to you. Less alignment, that's what we call being an a-hole. I'm not getting what I want. And then we look in the mirror and we recognize it's our own behavior. We're trying to be somebody we're not. We're chasing things that other people told us we should want. And then we're unhappy with it. I consider that, and we just had one of our guests jump on, one of my favorite humans of all time. So I'll introduce him in just a second. Right? So Nicsmas, the more aligned you are with who you are, the more honest you are about what you're trying to accomplish, the more successful. The less aligned, the more you're being an a-hole. Okay? So the toolbox that we've given over the last 11 days, it is a toolbox to think clearly, to catch our biases, to realign ourselves, to correct course when we're off course, because we are going to get off course, and we're going to fall victim to guilt and shame and go down this doom loop. The tools to identify BS, right? When are we going the wrong way because we believe something that doesn't stand up to the evidence? And we got to keep, and we have a perfect guest for this, keep time on our side and randomness on our side. That's all we've been talking about, is know who you are, know what you want, lean into your gifts, keep time on your side, keep randomness on your side. And that brings us to Nicsmas 2021, which I call Lessons from A-Holes. I'm not calling all of my friends and partners and guests A-Holes. I am saying we have all made mistakes and realized things about ourselves. And the people that I'm sharing today are the ones that, when I'm being kind of an a-hole, when I realize I'm a little off, is this my belief? Am I adopting somebody else's belief? Like, should I feel this way? Should I be obligated to do this? Why do I feel like I'm rowing in the wrong direction? These are the people I go to because they have a history of overcoming this themselves and for other people. So real quick, we'll go to the 6-word updates, and then we'll introduce our very first guest, probably my favorite human of all time. And we'll do that in about 4 minutes here. Let's look at our 6-word updates and the inbox check. I'll tell you about the inbox shortly because I shared that last night and I got it from Dr. Jeff Spencer. Keeping loops open, being receptive, winning. Awesome. So hit your 6-word updates. And here's what I have to say about when people try to knock you off course. Okay. Because you will figure out over time, you figure out who you are, and that does change. And maybe we'll have Dr. Jeff talk about that a little bit. This is a trick I got, and I'm going to share this with you because this is where I just share what's happening in real time. I've done Nicsmas for 11 days now, and I can tell you how many people aren't quite getting it because they say things like, wow, Nicsmas is great. You should do this. You should package it up. You should market this. You should put this in emails or put it into a book or whatever. And this goes back to from Randy Massengale, the 2 tyrants of leadership, which we talked about a couple of days ago. Scrutiny and expectation. Interestingly, and Dr. Jeff could probably talk about this, when you start doing something that people consider a little bit out of the ordinary, let's call it extraordinary, all of a sudden they have an infinite capacity to scrutinize how it could be done better. And they have an infinite capacity to lay down these expectations about how you should deliver it, how you should act, how they should participate, right? So the remedy, I'll just share this with you guys real quick and then I'll introduce our guest. The remedy that I learned from Randy Massengale, who will be joining us later today, along with Jeff, is you invite them to participate. It's amazing how many people say, you really should sleep in. You should really give yourself, you don't have to work so hard. Why don't you come out with us, have some drinks and sleep in tomorrow? And that it becomes stressful when you have the people you know, the people you love, the people around you telling you how you should be doing things differently. Invite them to participate. Now, you know what? I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. I'm going to, ride my bike and go to the office and plan. Why don't you come with me? It's amazing how quickly they go away when you invite them to participate in something extraordinary. So say, hey, you should really package this up and turn it into a book. I say, cool. Are you offering to do it for me? Well, no, but that'd be really cool if you did that. Like, okay, well, if you're going to do it for me, sure, take it and do it. All of a sudden, it's not such a great idea when they realize, ooh, that's a lot of work. So just know when these things come up, and I'm sharing this with you because it's what I'm going through right now. These things will come up, scrutiny and expectation. It's a very difficult conversation to navigate sometimes. Dr. Jeff Spencer has been very helpful for me navigating some of this stuff. But when in doubt, invite them to participate. Somebody says, you really should do it this way. And I know a lot of people here that are here live. Nacho Fiat, Dicka already outed himself the other day. So, there's a lot of typos there. Say, cool, you want to fix them? Here's the password. Clean it up. So invite them to participate. And what you'll find is that some people actually will participate. Dicka is one of those people. And you start building a pretty good support team of people to be around, right? Those are people that, like, who do you listen to when you get scrutiny, you get expectations, how do you filter through? Invite them to participate. Me personally, those that participate, they then get my attention after they have chosen to participate. So real time, that's what's happening in my world with Nicsmas. I thought I would share it with you because to know a thing, if you know a thing and you are not actively implementing a thing, then I'm not so sure that you know a thing. So it's really important to me to show you, like, this is what we're talking about. This is how it's showing up in my real life. Now, let me introduce our first guest today. I typically, when I introduce him, I start with something like this. You may have never heard of this person. However, if you're in my world and you've been in Nicsmas, you have most definitely heard of this person, probably every day. Probably had the largest impact on everything I shared over the last 11 days and helped me get the most aligned with my unique disposition and really figure out how to play my game. I'll give you an example. I was like, I have a hard time doing presentations, making slides. I know I need to do it. And it was actually Dr. Jeff that was like, no, just show up and answer questions. One of the few, the wisdom is through the roof, and I always call him the permission giver because he only works with the top 1% of the top 1%. And most of the time, and I'll let him speak to this because, I could be technically incorrect, but most of the time it's just about knowing yourself and getting out of your own way. So I think of him as the great permission giver. So probably have heard of him. And we can go quickly to his website and see who else has heard of him. Tiger Woods has heard of him. Jim Quick has heard of him. Chris Voss, if you've ever read Never Split the Difference. Richard Branson, Dave Asprey, Bulletproof Coffee. He's an Olympic medalist himself. He's coached 40 plus Olympic medals and world champions. And he is, it probably says it somewhere on here, the corner man. He is my corner man. He's the person in my ear. He's the one that says, when somebody says to me, Nick, that's a pretty big undertaking. Aren't you worried? I say, no, I'm not the least bit worried. I'm like, really? You must have an outrageous amount of confidence. Like, well, first of all, I do have an outrageous amount of confidence in my ability to figure things out. But I also have Dr. Jeff Spencer in my corner. And so if I need to be worried, I will know 10 steps ahead of time. So if I'm not worried right now, there's nothing to worry about. And I know that because I have this individual in my life, in my world, and it is always an honor to share this. He was gifted to me by Jeff Moore, and I am gifting him to anybody that I can. So I'm going to stop my share here, and I'm going to welcome the corner man, Dr. Jeff Spencer.
Hey, Nick. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. So just so you know, it's you and me on Zoom. We are on
perfect.
We are on YouTube. We're live right now, so don't say anything incriminating.
Okay.
Let's not get canceled. But let me turn my camera on here.
Yeah, there you go.
So we've been going through Nicsmas, and the theme. I wasn't going to do Nicsmas this year, and because there's a lot that goes into it. When you build a program, there's just a lot that goes into communication and follow up. And I said, that's not me. And I know, and I spent a lot of time with Dr. Jeff, and I know that I'm going to do my best when I'm just being myself and leaning in my gifts. So I'm going to do Nicsmas. I'm going to do it my way. We've had more viewers every day on this Nicsmas than any other Nicsmas, without all the follow-up, without all the prep, without all the work. And it has been primarily, here's everything you need to realize that other people, I'm not saying other people are full of shit. I am saying maybe we should develop a toolbox or a framework to check with ourselves before we believe other people. Because a lot of times, and again, the theme of Nicsmas is DALA, D-A-L-A. So it's either directions for acting like an adult or don't act like an asshole, whichever one better fits your sensibilities. And what I mean by that is, you ever find you're not where you want to be, and you look back and you realized, I knew better. I didn't trust myself. I wasn't playing my game. I wasn't using my gifts. I put too much faith in other people. When you find yourself in that position and you complain about it, that's what I consider being an a-hole. Because you put yourself in that position by not having the frameworks, the tools, or really knowing yourself. So what I would love to do is, one, give a couple minutes about what you do really well is leaning into your own gifts. You have the thing about how there's only one of you in creation, and how important that is. And another thing that I said that I got from you was, let's not determine too far in advance what it needs to look like. So those two topics. And then the big one is, if you're willing, look over the last year, let's say 2-3 years. Since COVID, I just consider it all one giant chunk of time where either you or one of your high profile clients realized, I have not been playing my game. I have not been leaning into my strengths. I have not been communicating effectively with my family, and I have been a total a-hole, and I need to do better. And maybe either what you're going to do moving forward, or what you told this high profile, high achieving client, how to be a little bit less of an a-hole in 2022.
Okay, well, Gary, well, first off, it's always a pleasure. I mean, we spend, several hours together a week, just an open conversation. And I want to just say how much I enjoy the mutual exchange of the depth of topics that you and I find ourselves getting into trouble with. Just
Oh,
some of the best, always, it's never planned. We show up and we let it come to us. So again, some of my most cherished time is spent in our deep and varied conversations each week. Yeah, to talk about the gifts thing here, I think that it's really important. I appreciate the fact that you already called out this idea. There's only one of you in all of creation, and I think about that. I mean, there's really, I guess it's been estimated that there's been 350 billion people on this planet until now. And I always see it as there's only one of us, and there is only going to be one of us. I mean, nobody has our assets, nobody has our unique time in space and history, nobody has our imprint from our exposure, nobody has our innate inclinations, and that creates a distinction here that, in my opinion, needs to be honored. And if we look at the definition of a champion, in my opinion, a champion is a manifester of their gifts. And what that does, that really levels the playing field because there's no comparisons really being made here. And I don't think that there should be, because, like, let's say we want to build a teeter totter. Well, if you bring the board and I bring the grain of sand that tips it over, who brings the most important part? Well, we both do. So really the size of the grain of sand versus the size of the teeter totter, that's really irrelevant. It's like, do we have the synergy and do we have the right sequencing of assembling things to reach the outcome in an exponential way? I mean, higher, faster, swifter, stronger, bigger, better for free, really is what we're talking about here. But we kind of look at our gifts through the eyes of comparison against everybody else, and we're looking at everybody else's scorecard to decide the value of what our life is and where we should be. And to me, that's a recipe for disaster. That's like suicide, because it's something you can never get on top of. It's like drawing a line through your to-do list. I mean, if your to-do list is your scorecard, that's a life of desperation. But if we're looking at being able to adapt and evolve to circumstances as they arise, which kind of brings us back to the time and the randomness question that you asked that we'll get to here in a second, once I'm done with my tirade on gifts here, is to just say that, we have a tendency to either be embarrassed or apologetic about our gifts. We look at the outcome of our gifts to being too insignificant. Look, you don't know that. Like, for me, when I was working at a bike shop as a kid, a guy came in and he was wearing a t-shirt that said USA Olympic team on it. And he doesn't even remember wearing the t-shirt. He didn't, probably the first one he grabbed, but I knew that t-shirt when I saw it. The only way he could get it was to become an Olympian. And that changed my life forever because I wanted that t-shirt. That's all I thought about. I saw that t-shirt. I wanted that t-shirt. So I went home and I got a box of crayons, those 3-level crayons with all the metallic colors, like, pewter, platinum, bronze, all those cool colors. And I got a piece of paper. Actually, I got my map over here. I got my logo. I'll show it to you later. That I did as a kid. And so I drew a picture of this t-shirt, in my childlike drawing. And I had my plan on how I was going to do it to become an Olympian, because that's the only way I could get the t-shirt. I was going to be brave, work hard, and never make an excuse. Those are the things that occurred to me when I was a kid. That's how I was going to do it. But the point is that this guy did not decide to wear the t-shirt, but yet there's a ripple effect that affected me. I did become an Olympian 10 years later. And the ripple effect of that has been incalculable. I have no idea what the ripple effect of that really is. But what I can say is that if you want to rearrange a universe, just bend your finger. Because, I mean, if every molecule in the universe has a connection to every other molecule, then that means I bend my finger and I've changed everything. So what I think is really important here is that we not decide the impact of what our gifts are. I mean, I get it. All the experts are telling us, well, what's your moonshot? How are you going to affect 1 billion people? So everybody kind of silently says to themselves, I don't know how that affect 1 billion people. Well, I don't think you need to. I mean, on the scaling that we set ourselves up for, that many of the experts tell us that we should be doing. And then we all feel guilty and we live lives of less than. We discount our capacities because we can't measure up to the standard. I think that's absolutely freaking ridiculous, because if you can really take ownership of your uniqueness and that oneness of you and all of creation. You ever seen an artist where they do a run of things, they put 1 of 255, and the first guy that gets the first edition, he's the guy that gets the golden nugget, should I say. But it's like, we have to prize our ability to achieve our and manifest our talents and our gifts. Because if you really want to balance the scales of tranquility of being, how are you going to do that? By doing something somebody else has decided you're going to be? That's like taking a lizard and trying to make them thrive in the Antarctic, or a penguin in the Sahara Desert. You cannot make yourself fit someplace that doesn't have the environment for your unique characteristics. You cannot get there, and you cannot live a life of tranquility or power or anticipation and enthusiasm if we're playing by everybody else's rules. And so what does that look like? It means, can we actually identify what our true gifts are? I think people can. They may not want to admit it. They may be embarrassed by it because they think that it's too small. But again, you don't know. And I think that anytime we presume to know what the impact is, we're discounting ourselves. We're trying to control life too much. The spontaneity of the opportunities that really create an amplified experience and impact, those things remain elusive because we're trying to control everything. And you and I have had deep conversations about this idea of randomness. Yeah, well, if you're trying to control randomness rather than build space in your life for it, then you can't have the timing that you need to connect with the things that have to go right to live an exponential life. It isn't going to happen because life never happens the way you think that it's going to anyhow. I mean, just look at your own life like right now. Well, how did your plans work out? And how much effort did it take to try to get to where you wanted to get to? A lot of time and effort, right? But if you got the canoe aligned with being able to handle the variability of time, randomness, and energy, then all of a sudden you pick up a tailwind where it kind of pushes you along because you're not swimming upstream against the resistance. And that's the gift of being obedient to developing what your gifts truly are. Because again, if we're trying to play someone else's game by their rules, by definition, like, we've already lost. So all I would say is that if you ever want to know who you are, well, who am I? Well, just write down your gifts, because your gifts that you were gifted with, those are the easiest things to manifest, quite honestly. But here's the deal, is that sometimes we think, well, if they're easy to manifest, well, then we don't deserve it because life's supposed to be hard. I mean, how many times have you heard that lie? It's just like only a million times today, I'm guessing. So again, I feel we need to kind of square up this whole conversation and really ask ourselves, well, whose rules am I playing by? It's not my way or the highway, but there's sort of a universal set of rules here that all the prolific achievers have shared with us on how we get from where we are to where we want to get to. And that's the path of least resistance. Well, then again, there's another side of this too, is that we can feel like, well, if it's a gift for us, then maybe we don't deserve it. And then people are mad at us because they think we're taking a shortcut or we're privileged to get to where we want to get to. That's garbage. I mean, everybody's got their gifts. Everybody's got an advantage up on everybody else in this world by virtue of the fact that there's only one of us in all of creation. It's a matter of claiming it and not being embarrassed by it, but by standing behind it to build a life around it and be proud of it. And that's the way that we start to find the level of alignment with ourselves. And that's how we become masters of time, energy, and randomness, because we're not working against it. We're riding the current with it. We made friends with that. It has a perfect track record, as you and I have talked about. These things are absolutely freaking undefeated. So why don't we get in alignment with them rather than to try to get them to tap out, because that's like never going to tap. It's never going to happen. Another thing I'll say to this, kind of while I'm on this roll here, is that the idea of time is also reflected in the fact that there's probably going to be 3 or 4 days a year that are going to make or break your year. And those days are not scripted. They're random, like they're rogue waves. A rogue wave is a 150-foot wave or 200-foot wave in the ocean that happens periodically, that's not given advance notice of. They just show up. And we have rogue waves in our life. We have rogue waves that are good for us, that can catapult us to exponential. We have rogue waves that can wipe us off the face of the earth. And the question is how are we preparing for the readiness to be able to engage those days when they show up unannounced. And that has to be part of like the equation. And that's something that you do really well. And anybody, here's my advice, everybody, is that if Nick's thinking about it, pay attention, because Nick has got this side to him that is a clairvoyant that can see the rogue wave coming. All I'm saying is, if Nick's thinking about it, listen up. So I think that's about all I have to say right now about the gift side of it. You want to pause and chat a little bit about it, or we can move
We could
into the
just,
next
you just said something
topic?
nice about me. We can just end right there, everybody.
Okay.
No,
Wow.
I appreciate that. That's what I was talking about at Nicsmas is, the trying to develop this ability of being receptive, which is
Yeah, for sure.
something I think that it's probably one of the things that, if I look back, is a gift of mine, but wasn't refined or honed, or I wasn't leaning into it until we started working together.
Yeah.
So just the concept of most efficient path forward, the concept of staying receptive, because we fall into this lie, and it is a lie, in my opinion, of hyper focus, right? Tune everything
Absolutely.
out, not line it up, knock it down. Those are probably the times in my life where I have gone backwards when I fall for that. So this receptivity, and here's what I want, if you're willing, here's what I'd like you to share. And I implore everybody to write this down. I did not share this in Nicsmas this year. The scorecard.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're saying, let's be receptive. Let's think about the most efficient path forward. Let's keep time on our side, randomness on our side. Let's manage our energy. Synergy is another thing that you work on. So how do I know? How do I grade myself today? And I would love for you to share your concept of the scorecard, because it's so counterintuitive, but it is so, it's just an unfair advantage to start using this scorecard in your day-to-day life.
Oh yeah, sure. Your receptivity, we'll come back to that as well. The idea of scorecard, as I see it, is that we are humans that need milestones, and we need metrics to look at to gauge progress against. So that's part of how we understand the efficiency and the efficacy of what we're doing. We have to have these feedback loops that happen, and they are a body of evidence that informs us of the progress that we're making. And that's important, because when we're making progress, it's easy to stay in the game. When we're not, then we're not sure, then it's easy to prematurely run for the exit, which we never want to do here. And I learned a long time ago that the classic scorecard, and remember, we have the human mindset way of doing things, which is the conventional wisdom. And usually if you follow the herd, it's exactly the opposite direction that you should go, even though it appeals to our human nature, because it offers us a tantalizing shortcut to the promised land, but it ends up being usually 10 times as long and 10 times more difficult. Is that the scorecard classically is a list. Like, for example, I'll just show one, like right here, so we've got a list here, and on the list we have all these things like crossed off. I mean, this is like what we live by, and this is the scorecard by which we assess and give ourselves credit for and credit against, is how many lines can I get through the list. Because I mean, after all, we're supposed to commit to something, and we're supposed to keep our eye on the ball. We're supposed to stay vigilant and not take our eye off the ball. And I don't think that that's true, because really the plans that we make are our best estimates against the probable future, with not taking into consideration what the reality of that future is, because we, quite honestly, we do not know. Therefore, if you're supposed to stick rigidly to a plan, and it's supposed to be enacted with precise precision, and we know that the context always changes when we get there, then that's setting ourselves up for defeat and frustration and a life of despair is what that is. And so therefore, this idea of line through the list as being the criteria, what do we all know about the list? It only gets longer, it only gets bigger. You can never catch up, you can never get there. So what does that mean in terms of how you feel about your life? You feel your life feels like garbage. It's just one long groundhog day of misery that you're going to get up to day in and day out. And the truth is that 90% of what we think is going to happen in life never happens anyhow. Therefore, the to-do list is a provisional idea, meaning it's a best estimate based upon what we know to be true now about what the future might be like. when it comes time to enacting what we set down for ourselves. But the only thing that really matters is how well are we reading reality once we get there, and are we adapting correctly? Because if we're not adapting correctly, we're wasting time and effort, and we're putting time and effort into things that have become obsolete. That's the definition of like insanity. So in my opinion, the scorecard should be not lines through the list, but how well did we adapt? Because to me, that's the real scorecard. And then what it aligns us with the energy, the time, and the randomness, correct? We've made it our friend. Those are undefeated friends that are now a part of our team. And also say, for me, the time to do that on Sunday, look back at the previous week, and then you give yourself your weekly scorecard. Or at the end of the day, even better, you can give yourself a daily score. Just do that mentally. You don't need to write it down, but like, how well did I adapt today? Because anybody that expects anything more from that from you, in my estimation, doesn't understand what it takes to live a life of passion, purpose, productivity, and prosperity. You cannot get there by the conventional scorecard that we use. So I hope that that kind of helps out. In summary, we can go deeper in your life if you like, Nick, but suffice it to say that it's time to really get real about this. We put way too much pressure on ourselves following something that seems right but goes so wrong, and all that does is keep us trapped in a life of continuous despair. There is no way out from that. There is no chance of winning if we're looking at just drawing a line through the list.
And so it's perfectly aligned with and typically we're always on the same wavelength, is all of Nicsmas, right? We say, how well did I adapt to the day?
That's it.
Right. Given
it's a scorecard.
Given
Jeff
what
Spencer scorecard. That's it.
Knowing that things happened today that I could not have conceived of yesterday.
That's
but
right.
We also have to kind of weigh it, right, against how do I know how well I adapted? Well, you have to know where you're at. You have to know where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know what you, given my strengths and my weaknesses, because it's possible, right? And I'm just going to ask you a question, just open conversation here, that I could look at somebody that I don't know and say, you didn't adapt to that very well. But the reality is, given their strengths and their preferences and their disposition, and if I don't know their goals, they may have adapted as well as they could have, given where they're at, their skill set, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, of course.
There's just something about, and this is why I think working with somebody like Dr. Jeff, going through GPS process, we do a little bit of this in the CCA. It's you really do have to fight for who am I. And you may not get an answer right away. It might be a process, and life lends progression, right? It may change over time, but you got to keep fighting for, like, who am I? What are my strengths? And what am I really trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and that's always morphing. If it stays the same too long, it means you're not adapting as a human. You're not evolving. So again, that's a work in progress that tabs need to be kept on, and the aspirational things that you do should always be reinforcing and challenge us appropriately to a further expression of the competency that we're continuing to take on. Because every time you learn a new vocabulary word or you learn a new skill, then it raises your capacity to do things in a slightly different way. And unless those upgrades are being made, then we're finding ourselves on a slippery slope, eventually going backwards, and we're losing contact with the front pack. So again, if there's not demonstrable adaptation up in our level of competency, and it's not being applied because we're living in safety, then the rewards that are gained from stepping into the continual evolution of your gifts, you will experience that by just feeling like you're really not stepping into what you need to step into. And notice I didn't say step above where you should be or where you think you should be or what other people think that it should be, but where it should be really for yourself. So again, it's a moving target. It always needs to be evolving. And what's also important about that is that when you evolve, then you're attracting a different set of people into your life as well. And we will outgrow people as we continue to ascend. Other people will not be ascending because they're not evolving, because they're not adding new skills into their repertoire that expands the library of possibility that they have. And none of us should be held back by those that can't keep up, because we're not here on this earth to get brownie buttons by other people, but we're on this planet to manifest our gifts. And to me, it's a moral obligation to do so, because especially in today's world that's descending quickly into mediocrity, we can't go fast enough into mediocrity. There needs to be examples of people that have demonstrated that moving up and holding ground, evolution, tranquility of being, that's absolutely possible.
That's again, people will be shocked if I tell them that you did not watch all of Nicsmas, because
no, I didn't watch any of it.
Yeah,
only because I love you, man. We're cyclically connected here.
But. Yeah, we spend enough time. We know what's going on. So let's say in about 5 minutes, Steve Sims is going to drop on.
Oh, cool.
But and obviously, I'd love for you to hang out. I think you'll be back at 11 because I'm going to have you and Randy. So what I'm going to do, I'll tell everybody here. I'm going to text you after this, and I'll kind of let you know. I want you and Randy to grill each other a little bit, just banter about
perfect
something. So I'll let you cue it up, and I'll let you kick it off with him.
All right.
But if we say directions for acting like an adult, or don't act like an asshole. Definition of an asshole being, I'm here and I want to be here, and I keep behaving in a way that is diametrically opposed to reaching my goal. What is the one thing that you think is the most helpful to everybody so that they stop rowing in the wrong direction, stop shooting them in the foot? What can they do? Where do they look? What is a mental framework, just so that they stop, again, shooting themselves in the foot, right? How do we close the gap between where we're at, where we want to be?
Well, a couple things here. The first thing is that action organizes. It's not like I'm going to get organized and I'll start. No, you start to organize. The second part to that is to decide. No, the second thing I want to say here is that you're never going to be ready in your own mind to take the step towards next. So therefore, you just do it. Well, how do we decide what next is? Well, you decide what's getting in the way of you moving forward, and whatever that is. You don't need to be fully prepared to take the step, because the action of taking it is the thing that's going to organize the process, like moving forward. It's the best advice I could give. And if you're not clear and sure about what that is, well, find somebody that can help you clarify that. But you want to take the most significant thing that you know that will move the needle first. That would be my recommendation. And as soon as you even start to think about it, you're going to automatically feel better just by virtue of the fact that you're thinking about it.
Fantastic. I'm going to go gallery view so people can
see
the next absolute maniac
this is trouble.
of a guest here. So I'll say this real quick, and then obviously, Jeff, always love to have you hanging out. It's about 2 weeks. In about 2 weeks, we're doing an event in California, the Champions Experience with Dr. Jeff Spencer. If you can make it out, I don't know how travel is with COVID and all that. It's 2 days with Jeff, me, some of you know Padram. Padram will be there. Some of the highest performing people you can imagine. We just did a Champions Experience a couple weeks ago, next couple months ago now, maybe. It's transformative. So you can reach out to Jeff. You can reach out to me. We'll have more information about it later. But if you happen, what are the dates?
Yeah, it's January 14th to 15th.
If you can make it January 14th, 15th to California, I cannot give a stronger endorsement for an event. So we'll pull on Jeff at 11 o'clock. Listening to him and Randy Massengale. Randy Massengale was a senior advisor to Bill Gates in the 90s at Microsoft. He's a friend of the mentor of ours. Listen to them banter back and forth. I kind of just want to kick it off and then sit back and watch. So that'll be from about 11 to 11:30ish. But in the meantime, as you can see on our screen here, we have another guest, Steve, just letting you know, same warning I gave Dr. Spencer here. Three of us are on Zoom. We're streaming on YouTube live right now. So don't say anything incriminating. Don't get us canceled. Or
I'll try not to, but I have to marry your statement Going to Jeff Spencer's event is probably one of the smartest things you're going to do this year, last year, and next year. And I'll also be there. So
That's
I'm
right.
going to be at Jeff's event as well. So it's a load of champions, a load of really smart people, and me.
So that is an endorsement. For those of you that don't know, let's take a quick look at Steve Sims. I got Dr. Jeff Spencer and Steve Sims, or I almost said Dr. Steve Sims. That would have been incorrect.
Very.
So we have Steve Sims. If you do not know Steve, let me do a quick introduction. If you're in my world, you should know Steve. You can see right here, Jay Abraham, simply put, I endorse him. Steve Sims defines what it means to be your authentic self. What have we talked about the last 11 days? We've talked about playing your game, know yourself, be yourself. It's Steve, I think, that says it's way too much work trying to be somebody else. So perfect fit. Steve is either the modern day or the real life Wizard of Oz. I'm not really sure which one we go with anymore.
Yeah. It's weird.
Which one is it?
Well, Forbes called me the real life Wizard of Oz.
All right. So the real life Wizard of Oz, because when I first met Steve, I'll tell you a quick story. I got to figure out how to navigate this technology here. When I first met Steve, we decided he did a quick training. And the first thing he said was, I've been in a room of millionaires and nobody knew who I was. You know why? And everybody's like, no, why? Because they weren't billionaires. And I said, ooh, I want to be like this guy when I grow up. I like that. Because if you want to do something that is considered impossible, many of you have read his book, Blue Fishing. If you want to, I'm just letting Dan Nicholson in to join us here. If you want to do something that would be considered impossible, you call Steve. Let me tell you about the times I've hung out with Steve. The first time I hung out with Steve was his birthday in Carlsbad, and met the founder of UGG Boots and Tim Larkin, a bunch of really cool people. I think the next time I hung out with Steve was Elton John's private gala, right? The charity gala. The next time I hung out with Steve, we went to prison one time. That's an interesting story. We were some of the first non-Tesla employees. I think they said the first, but it kind of seemed like maybe they'd done the tour before, to step foot in Elon's Gigafactory. So the point is, if you have a chance to hang out with Steve, you're going to do something that you never thought you'd be able to do. You never thought you'd be able to afford it. And you're going to be in a room of people that you never thought you'd be in a room with. And I think there's something really, Steve might be getting in the crypto space. We'll share a little bit about that shortly. But Steve, what I'd love to do just while you have the time is, Nicsmas, we're talking a lot about playing your own game, right? You're here, you want to be here, you have these huge aspirations, and you get stuck playing somebody else's game. You get stuck forgetting who you are. You get stuck following other people's rules. From the man that makes the impossible happen, if you wouldn't mind just sharing some of the ways that being yourself and some of the things that maybe, I don't know if you have practices or you have mantras or you have exercises or frameworks where when other people say, Steve, you should really do it this way, you have the ability to go, nah, fuck off. I do it my way. How do you just kind of talk about maintaining that space and playing your game and being yourself and doing the impossible?
Well, I think the easiest thing to sum it up accurately is I made more mistakes than other people. I was a East London bricklayer and not the kind of smooth, debonair guy that should be hanging around with Elon Musk, Prince Albert of Monaco and billionaires. So I first of all thought to myself, well, I'm not very articulate. I'm not very smooth. I'm not very good looking. I've got all these things against me trying to win your kind of admiration or aspiration, should I say. And so I just thought to myself, what do people want? They want a solution. So I realized that billionaires wanted to outdo each other. They wanted cocktail stories. There was nothing greater for a billionaire than to be able to sit there and go, well, yes, I was playing piano with Elton John the other day, or I was strolling through the Gigafactory with my buddy Elon. They all want to do that stuff. If I could be a solution, everything else about this just went by the wayside. And so I started off in the early stages going, right, okay, focus on them, just on them, never talk about me, never think about me. And so I would turn up at meetings to go, hey, how are you? What's your problem? What can we solve? You know, how can we make you more interesting? How can we give you better stories? How can we do this for you? I always focused the conversation on them. Probably about 8 years in, I was living in a penthouse in Geneva, doing very well for myself. And I made the fatal mistake of going, hang on a minute, I need a change. I need to be what all of these people think I need to be. I do need to look a certain way. I do need to talk a certain way. And the daft thing was, two things happened. I started to get more clients, which, you know, people are like, well, how was that a bad problem? The bad problem was the second part of this. I lost connection. By me becoming someone else, I bought a Ferrari, okay? And people were impressed with the Ferrari. People were impressed with the Audemars Piguet watch. People were impressed with all that shit that I didn't care about. And I suddenly realized that while I was gaining more clients, I was losing the relationships I had. Now I wasn't connecting with people. And it became very, very depressing. There's a famous picture we have in our office, which I don't share. It's me up against the bar with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone during the Monaco Grand Prix party on the Ferrari yacht. And there's me in a bloody suit. And we joke about it, that this is the best party that I never went to, because I showed up as someone else. I listened to everyone else. And all the relationships I really had, they didn't want to talk to me anymore because I'd become someone superficial. I got rid of all of that. And Jeff knows me. You know me. Jeff Moore knows me. I just went, screw it. If you can't deal with this, then we shouldn't be communicating. I don't want to put any effort and energy in being someone who you think I should be. I want to put all my effort and energy into solving, supporting, loving, being there. And so quite simply, I went, screw it, that's not for me. Sold the cars, went back to the motorbikes. As all of you know, black T-shirt forever, a bit chilly today, so black hoodie. But I found something refreshing. All my energy and effort in trying to be somebody else was gone, which meant that I had 100% effort now on focusing on being the solution. And I love it. I'm very calm and very easy about going, hey, you and I, we're not right. See ya. Very easy about doing that.
So you can see for the people that are in my world, which is probably everybody watching, you see why Steve and I get along. That's all. The last 11 days have really just been leaning into and giving permission to people and giving examples of exactly, like, recapture those resources, reallocate them to shit that matters. All the effort you're putting into what everybody else tells you to do, kindly, they can fuck right off. And so I hear this all the time. I used to send it out. I don't anymore because I'm lazy. But I used to send blue fishing to everybody that signed up for all of my stuff. And so for those of you that don't know, Blue Fishing is Steve's book, which is basically it's very well written. It's a very easy read because it's in the way I translate it is like, hey, I'm Steve. This is what I do. This is how I do it. Here's everything that you need to know how to do what I do. And it has been a hit. It's bestseller. It's how many different languages? I've seen so many goofy.
I think it's like 7. It's just been released in, it became number 1 in Poland in 2 hours in Polish. And then it got released in Russian. I think it was 3 months ago.
Awesome. And the covers are great. They're just, I get a kick out of the weird ass covers they come up with.
Weird. Yeah.
So you wrote a book, How to Do Anything. People love the book. It talks about the power of the password and all that. If you're open to share, I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but there may be another book launch coming. And I know people have been waiting. Can you share a little bit of the difference between Blue Fishing and the upcoming book, and a little bit about how you're going to launch it? I know a little bit about it, and I can share some of the details on the blockchain side. But what I don't know, we haven't had this talk yet, is Blue Fishing, how to make anything happen. What's next?
It's not until you do something that you realize. And they always say, there's a beautiful sentence that I learned years ago: experience comes 3 seconds after you needed it. I wrote Blue Fishing because I was given an opportunity. I was paid very well. And I thought to myself, yeah, I'm going to get a book out there. Why not? I was very fortunate. For all of you people out there going, hey, I really want to write a book. I want to get a big publisher behind me. I want to get a big retainer. I'm sorry I didn't have that. I was in a bar, I met someone in a party, and bang, the next minute I got a book deal. So I had no effort required to get it. Therefore, never put anything in it other than, okay, I'm going to tell my story. And I did. And as you've already said, it's a very simple way to go, hey, if this idiot can be doing this with the Pope, I'm already out of excuses. Now, as I wrote the book and I suddenly saw the reaction that it was making, because if any of you ever write a book or do a course, you'll realize the second you do it and you put it out there, you don't own it anymore. You know, someone else does. And how they react to it, you create a monster and you hope it impacts someone enough to activate some kind of drive in them that's going to make them do something wonderful. But you're not in control of that. You've just laid the ingredients out there. So I suddenly started seeing how people were acting. I was like, hang on a minute. Why did it take this book to get you to do something? Well, how come this taught you to get out of bad relationships, make good relationships, make things happen based on you rather than everyone else on Instagram? And so I saw those reactions and I thought, hang on a minute, there's something else here. There's another level. And I realized that, as you've beautifully keyed it up, we listen to too many arseholes. We listen to too many people that don't know shit, and then we take their word for it. It's like the guy that walks up to someone in a pub and goes, hey, I sold my car. I got 10 grand now. And they get investment advice from the guy on the end of the bar that's never left his bar stool. They can't afford his third beer. We listen to the wrong people. And in a superficial world where we're trusting people just because they're leaning up against a car or they're on a private jet that's never left a bloody runway, we're listening to the wrong people. So I know some pretty cool people, and they have ways of thinking. They have ways of giving themselves the mantras, giving themselves the infrastructure in their head that dictates, who do I listen to? How do I react? How do I act? How do I impact? How do I create? And I wanted to put that out there. So it is a sequel from the first one. I'm going to suggest that anyone that listens and buys the second book does make sure they get the first book so they can see, okay, this is what I got up to with Andrea Bocelli and Elton John, all this kind of stuff. And now they can understand the why, the how, and how those people react and why those people got involved with me. And more importantly, how it can benefit you and how you can change your mindset to adapt to the way billionaires and the most powerful people in the world think, react, and act.
So believe it or not, thank you for that. And believe it or not, everybody listening, Steve also did not watch Nicsmas, but what you just said was perfectly aligned with, I have a whole segment on I call it teaching pigeons how to fly, which is basically, you know, professors go out and lecture pigeons how to fly and then take credit for it. Like the birds were going to fly anyway, but we mistakenly gave them credit for something. So thank you for that. That said, do you want to share a few, and then I'll share what I know you're working on. Some of those frameworks, maybe just one or two. I shared some of mine over the last couple of days. The BS meter, right? What is the thin slice? Where do you look to go? That's BS.
Well, you always look at the substance rather than the statement. And that's the first thing. So you get a lot of people talking a lot of great talk because they've read it in a book, they've watched it on a YouTube video. You're going to get people taking your content today. I know you will, because you're sharp. They're going to take your content, they're going to shove it in a meme, they're going to post it up on their Instagram and take credit for it. Now, probably not in this community because you do have a very good bullshit meter and you have a good crowd.
They will.
Yeah. Well, there you go. If they spread it and they impact it, there you go. But I'm always a great believer that if someone's saying something to me, I look behind them. How did you get to that statement? How did you get to that decision? And so I look behind them. And if they're rolling around in a rental car, that's not going to upset me. But if they're leaning up against something that they don't own, purely and simply thinking that's what's going to seduce me, that's when the ticks start going on. So I suppose, and me and you have had these conversations. We've been in, me and you have been sitting in Nobu getting drunk on great samurai swords, having great conversations, quite bluntly, and I mean no disrespect, but looking like a pair of, beggars just on the corner. Just in
looking like we look right now.
look like we do now, ordering fantastic drinks, and people are like, I'm going to avoid those two. They probably can't afford to eat here. They're just having a quick drink because it makes them feel good. And they know between the pair of us, we can buy the damn place. But it's just ridiculous. So I always look behind the people to go, how did you get to the statement you're giving me? And I quizzed them. And this is something people don't do now. If I'm stood here saying, hey, do this course, do this, read this book, be part of Nicsmas, join this, go to Jeff Spencer's event, I want you to ask me, why do you think it would work for me? And I want you to question me. And I'll go, this is why. Because they've done this, they've got the credibility, they know where they're coming from, they've made mistakes, they've screwed up, they've learned, they've got the MBA of the street that tells them this doesn't work, that does. And so I'm always a great believer in question people. And that was one of the daft things. I realized that most people look at it and make a decision based on their eyeballs rather than their brain cells.
The danger, right, is that we make decisions based on what we see, and the charlatans of the world learn about what to show us.
Yeah.
That's much easier than doing work, right? Like, so let me show you the quote from today. This was before you got on. The best compliment to me is you're right with your scars. Everything else is just verbiage. So we're perfectly aligned. Again, I try not to prep anybody just to see how aligned we are in our thinking. So speaking of writing with your scars, discovering the BS meters, I imagine when you wrote a book, and I've been to events with you, and I know once you have a book and once everybody knows who you are, everybody's got something to promise you. Everybody's wants to be your best friend. So developing this BS meter and then turning around and writing about how billionaires think. What I know, and I hope it's okay to share openly, I assume that it is I know that the next book launch is going to be an NFT series. I'm super excited about that because obviously half the people watching, there's about 700 views a day on these Nicsmas. About half of them are NFT junkies. So they're going to love it. I also know that whatever you promise, you're going to go way above and beyond. And people are going to go, oh, cool, I'm hanging out with Steve Sims. It'll be great. And they're going to look around and be like, how the hell did I end up in a room with these people at this place? You told me one time, I'll give you guys an example. One time you said, meet at this, I'll give you two examples because you did this twice to me. Meet at this intersection. Just get dropped off at this intersection. Okay.
For a signpost. That was it. I gave you a signpost. You had to stand next to him.
And then I think it was Henry, your son, came out and was like, okay, come on in. And the first one was, I think it was East West Studios. So we ended up hanging out in Lionel Richie's room or whoever.
The recording studio that Frank Sinatra built on Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard.
So that was phenomenal. And the second time you said meet on this intersection, it was Rodeo Avenue or Rodeo Drive or whatever, and had closed down Louis Vuitton and rented out the top floor for a private party. So that's the roof kind of stuff. Yeah. You don't really know what you're buying. Sometimes you just get told to go to a signpost and wait. And it's just like, how the hell did I end up here? So I'm looking forward to see what you do, but talk to me. I'll tell you what I know. I know there are 5 total NFTs. They each represent a different level. Right, one being a signed book, another one being a package of signed books, one being the launch party. And then the last one gives you access to the 5th one, which is a VIP experience. Now, the VIP experience with Steve Sims is priceless. I know that. Share what you can about what you know so far about the book launch, some of the, just how would you explain what people might be purchasing if they go to OpenSea and start buying these NFTs?
So the first two, as you say, the first 2 levels, one of them gets an autograph book, the other one gets a group of personalized books, so you can have them addressed to your mates or whatever. But when we launched Bluefishing, I was told I had to do some kind. This was Simon and Schuster that published my book. I was told I had to do some kind of launch, and they suggested that I did it like everybody does by booking a table in Barnes and Noble, grabbing some champagne, and sitting there on a Saturday afternoon signing books. This didn't make sense to me. again, I thought, why have I got to do something your way when I'm not you? You know, this didn't make sense. So I actually took over a very cool whiskey bar on Sunset Boulevard and invited my mates. And we invited everyone from Lewis House, Jim Quick, Greg Reed, Matt Maddox. We invited a whole bunch of really cool people because they were my friends. And we just had this kick-ass party. And the daft thing was, and you can actually go to stevedsims.com and watch the video. I didn't know it was being videoed. I swear on my family, I had no idea it was being videoed. I just wanted to get drunk with a bunch of friends. And Simon Schuster said, you've got to put a display of books in there. Otherwise, it's not a launch. So we just shoved them on the end of the bar and then just got shit-faced. And one of the people there, Sonia Hatter and Cole Hatter of Thrive, they actually videoed it and didn't tell me until a few days later. And they went, hey, we've got a present for you. Here you go. And they gave me this absolutely beautiful video. Now, I just posted that because I thought, it was me getting together with some friends. But that was one of the instigators that took everything off because people went, hey, this is how he hangs out. This is him just getting drunk with a bunch of people that haven't been rented to be there, that are just buddies. And I suddenly realized, why don't other people do it that way? Now, as you know, you wandered through the Gigafactory, through the Bunny Ranch, the rooftop of Louis Vuitton music studios. You know, my clients have been all over the planet doing some amazing things. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to do things how people have always done them. This is my second book. I was astonished the way the first one went off. I'm going to put this one out there and it's going to be done sim style. So, you know, if you think me sticking you at a corner and going, be there at 8 o'clock and then suddenly shoving you up on the roof deck of Louis Vuitton and Rodeo Drive is cool, then I'm going to tell you that my launch party is, the first one's already what a lot of people go, hey, I want to, believe it or not, I'm actually paid to do launch parties like I did that one. This next one, I know what I'm doing. This next one's going to be, Steve Sims is here. It gives a crap. Look where I am. Look who I'm with. This one's going to be something you're going to be telling the kids about.
That's fantastic. I will be there.
You will.
Assuming there's, you know, lockdown and COVID and all that crap, but whatever. I don't care. I'll be there. So the takeaway that I'm just going to tie this in really quick for the people that have been watching the last 11 days. It's about 16 hours over 11 days. I've just been talking about observations and stuff I've learned. Is the theme is these people, you're weird, right? They're weird. And then when they're billionaires, we call them eccentric and it's endearing. That's a concept I actually stole from Dan Nicholson, who's here. But they're weird because they play their own game. They have their own rules. They understand their strengths. They don't give a shit what you like. You should look this way and they don't care. So we think they're weird because they don't care. Then they're successful. Then they're eccentric. And then of course it all makes sense. Right. So
then everyone copies them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that's kind of been an ongoing, just an ongoing thing over the last days. Like, just know who you are. Sometimes you're going to lose. Like, you're going to lose. It's going to happen. Like you said, you're going to fuck up. You may as well fuck up playing your own game, because how horrible is it to fail playing somebody else's game? Like, that's misery on top of misery. So I'll give you guys a sneak peek. Now, in the descriptions of this YouTube, there's a link to a Telegram. That is the Steve Sims NFT launch Telegram. Okay, you could drop in there, turn your notifications on if you don't want to miss anything. I believe I'm going to talk to Henry and make sure that everything goes, make sure there's no issues there. Should be live tomorrow.
Yep.
Sneak peek. It'll look a little bit like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. There is a fifth one. The only way to get that fifth one, which is the VIP access, is to have all 4 of these. That'll all be explained in Telegram. Get a nice video from Steve or something. But if you're watching this and you're, man, I don't want to miss that, just go on the Telegram. You won't miss it. If you don't go on the Telegram and you sit around and you wait for emails or something, that's on you. You're being an a-hole, expecting somebody else to give you the things that you want. If you know you want it, do the thing you got to do to make sure you get it. Steve, anything else that you would like to share going into 2022?
Community. And you've done a great job of it. You know, we've had all these keywords every year, 10X, pivot, all of these kind of things. I think this is the year of community. You know, we're not looking for clients. We're not looking for customers. We're looking for a community, people that will loyally support us above and beyond trying to get a discount code. So for 2022, for 2021, for 2020, it's been absolutely fantastic for me. But as we move into a new year, you really need to be focusing on your tribe. You really need to be focusing on your group.
Awesome. Thank you. You are welcome to hang out. It's been a pleasure. I know that you have podcast interviews and all kinds of fancy stuff to do, but we'll keep everybody updated. Give it about 24 hours. Everybody watch us replay. They'll jump in that Telegram group, and we'll make sure that anybody that wants to do Steve Sims style events and participate in one, we'll make sure that they know how to do so.
Nick, you're a gent. I do actually have to jump off till Christmas, but happy birthday, buddy. And I'll speak with you soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
See you later. Bye.
All right. Now we are stuck with Dr. Jeff Spencer, who may or may not have a camera and microphone, and the one and only Dan Nicholson, who's been creeping in the background. I meant to introduce him, but he got into the office a little bit late. We do share an office. You probably saw him come in, and
I got the better view though.
Yeah,
so
that is definitely
that
real.
paid off for me.
Yeah, somehow we share the same office, have completely different views out our window.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's great.
So I know you have a limited amount of time because you got like family stuff. I'm going to check the YouTube comments because I've talked a lot about both of you, Jeff and Dan, see if anybody has any questions. But the question I have, which we talk about all the time, so I'm trying to play dumb here, like I don't already have inside baseball, is how do we look back? And you and I talk about this all the time. How do we look back at the last 2 years and say, man, there's times we haven't been playing our game, and get back on track, and how you personally, because we have different styles. So I've shared mine over the last couple of days. How are you moving forward into 2022? What frameworks, what tools, what issue processors that many of which you have developed are you using to make sure that you stay in your zone and you play your game and focused on closing the gap?
Well, the ultimate ace card that I have, and you have similarly, is that I have access to talk to Randy once a week. So that's an unfair advantage, just like having the ability to talk to Dr. Jeff once a week is a unfair advantage, right? Because with my conversations with Randy, I don't have permission to talk about any business strategy or anything in the category of more unless we've addressed what's going on in my personal life. How's my relationship with my wife? How's my relationship with my kids? Because what I've told him is those are the things that are most important to me, and every action needs to get us closer to the things that we want. So can't talk about anything, again, more business related strategies, even though they may feel like acute problems in the moment. Randy, I really need to talk to you about this crypto hedge fund, or I really need to talk to you about these opportunity zones, or I'm trying to sort out whatever next round of CCA. Well, we got to start with what's going on with the family, what's going on with the wife. Are you journaling? Are you exercising? All these sort of things, again, that I've espoused are my core priorities. And also they align with Randy's teachings as well. So he's always going to go back to repetition, intensity, purpose. And because I think you shared the exercise of playing your game and how do you get back to that. And my sport is growing up was basketball. And I was the tall, lanky kid. So I got put under the hoop, but really I wanted to be a shooting guard, take the ball, have the last shot. If I'm sideways, what Randy assigns to me is to go shoot hoops in the morning for like the next 2 weeks. Or more recently, I've done a lot of endurance sports. So maybe some combination of shooting hoops and just like sitting on my spin bike for a while or going for a run. So getting back to those core things that my identity aligned the most with, getting back to those things that allows me to get clarity and start to play my game again.
we talk a lot about, again, I try to give credit where it's due, but I have such an amalgamation of Dr. Jeff and Randy and Dan and, we talk about clarity, certainty, collapsing time. And Jeff, if you're here, I'd love for you to jump in. I know you only got about 10 minutes. And it's important to recognize, like I think what Dan just said, is that getting clarity is an action. Like we want to skip that and start checking off boxes. But I think Dan does a good job of being active about it. Me talking to Jeff all the time, that there's like whoa, hold on. The action to take is, I know you got this business problem and you need revenue, but the action to take is like the things over here that help you get clarity. Because if you don't have clarity, like you can't have certainty, which is what our methodology is all about. It's an interesting, people have a very hard time with going back to the case framework, which I did share, which I stole from Dan and the CCA. That it's very similar to the compile phase. Everybody wants to skip what Jeff Spencer you call the what do you call your first page? Compile, collect, where it's like, let's actually take inventory of what we have. Everybody wants to skip that part.
That's hard. We just want to do stuff, execute.
Just
Hey, Dr. Jeff.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, good to see you as well. What I was going to say, Nick, is that, one of the things that I do with my clients, I have what I call the right goal criteria. There's all sorts of goals out there. There's big, hairy, audacious goals. There's moonshots. But to me, in the world that I play in, the most important goal to have is the right goal. And so if we want clarity, there's the right goal criteria. Just share what RIGHT stands for. So let's say you have a goal that you're considering pursuing. I call that a provisional goal, meaning that I'm just thinking about it. I haven't decided about it yet. I think most people don't really have a strong enough relationship with their goals, quite honestly. They think it as a goal in terms of what they're going to get back. I mean, they're not really thinking about the goal itself. So the right goal criteria are, at least in abbreviated form here, R stands for relevant. Why is your goal relevant? Put pen to paper, write why it's relevant to you. Then the I stands for impact. What's the impact of your goal going to be on yourself, on other people, on your legacy, and the world around you? Put your pen to the paper, because when you actually put the pen to the paper, now you're developing a thoughtful consideration against what you're proposing to do. So it's a reality check against your presumption. Last thing you want is to be pursuing a goal that you realize I didn't want to pursue it in the first place. It was a really bad idea. And so the G in right stands for grit. I mean, what sort of grit is required of me to be able to make this happen? And what sort of grit will I obtain from this? What will my ability to stay in the game be like? So again, we need to ask that question against it. The H in right stands for humanity. Is there enough humanity in this? Or is this just all about Jeff? Is just me hoarding more for myself based on my fear and my need for having more to feel secure about myself? Or is this really about humanity? Is there enough humanity in this for me to pursue this goal? And T stands for time. Do I have the time to do this? Is this the right time to do it? Is the time to completion actually appropriate? Is this something that I could really do? And there's a lot more depth in this that I really take my clients through to make sure that we don't waste time, effort, and resources chasing the wrong goal. So again, just a little bit of an insight into how Jeff takes this idea of goal setting. Most people, goal setting is easy. They just have the biggest target possible and they swing for the fences without having the capacity to know what it really takes and whether or not it's really the right goal to take. So I hope that provides it just a little bit of an insight there.
You know what we should do now's not the time, because I know you only have 10 minutes, Jeff.
Yeah.
You guys have, and I talk about Nicsmas, what people go, wow, this framework, and what book did you get it out of? And it's like, no, you don't. Like Jeff has this concept of readiness, and Dr. Kashi, we used to talk about readiness all the time. He's a biochemist, right? He's a PhD in biochemistry. And Dan separately comes up with financial readiness, and you overlay them, and it's just this concept of readiness that shows up in multiple domains. And the people that understand sustainability at the highest level, repeat achievement, have all independently come to this concept of readiness as being an important concept and something that needs to be measured that nobody's measuring. So I think what would be cool, and this is an open conversation. Sorry, everybody else watching. I think in the CCA, we can do a week or two just on really helping people understand readiness, financial readiness, but just readiness in general, which is not like everybody's so focused on production, but readiness on some level is the capacity to produce, right? Like over some period of time.
Most important, look, it's the most important thing ever. When I do my work with my clients, most of what everybody wants is the destination that you program into the GPS. It's like, I want X, therefore I'll pay you tens of thousands of dollars for the shortcut to get the X. Well, okay, that's great. But it's like, for me, the most important thing is your starting location. Because if you don't know where you are and you don't know your state of readiness, you don't know the variables that you need to control to make sure that you don't drive yourself off a cliff. And I see this freaking all the time. So again, this idea of readiness, that's why with my clients, I want to know everything about them before you even get started. So we know what the variables are. That's called readiness. Look, your state of readiness is the distance at any moment in time. Everybody's listening right now. Whatever this moment is for you, like right now, your state of readiness, your competency will tell you the time, distance, and the resources required to achieve any goal that you can currently have on your list of goals to achieve in your life. It's all about readiness, man. And if you don't know your readiness, I suggest you don't get started or you go for the low goal. Don't go for the big goal. Don't do it. Please don't do that.
We say this, right? And again, I talk to Jeff for hours a week. I talk to Dan for hours a week. And I'm very fortunate to just get to observe this overlap. But we got this idea of readiness, right? And if we agree that we want to keep time on our side, we want to keep randomness on our side, we want to mitigate risk, and we want to keep asymmetry to the upside, which is just again amalgamation of conversations that we've had,
right?
Then we agree that not blowing yourself up, avoiding ruin, is like step number one. It shouldn't even have to be said.
Right.
Yeah. Let me jump in on that one for a second. Yeah. And it somewhat intersects with Dr. Jeff was talking about, and I know we've talked about this a few times in the past, because it comes up so often. I call it the highest month paradigm. I think Dr. Jeff might have a term for this, or he certainly shared some anecdotes before. But what I've observed on the financial side of things is that oftentimes when people have their highest month or they reach some massive milestone, maybe they threw their biggest event ever, or they just had a best-selling book, or whatever industry they're playing or a huge objective they set, that they tend to be at the highest risk point as well. So in order to get there, they've taken a massive amount of risk. And what I've observed in the data is that in the 3 to 4 months that follow after they have their highest month, or it represents some milestone, they blow themselves up. So in the business context, they go, okay, I just to put a number to it, finally got to 7 figures. That's been a goal. It's my highest month in sales, etc. Now I need to scale because I want to get took me 10 years to get to 7 figures. So now what I need to do is set my next goal, which is 100 million. It's like somehow we went from, it took me 10 years to get to $1 million. Now, of course, I got to make some crazy goal, $100 million. And they spend the next 3 or 4 months hiring all these people. And what ends up happening is that they run out of money because there wasn't enough data to actually support that the business that they built to get to 7 figures is actually sustainable. And so they blow themselves up, right, in this attempt to get more. But if you ask them when they reach their highest month or hit this milestone, what's most important to you? They go, well, I want more time with my kids. Like, well, all your actions for the last 4 months don't indicate that you wanted more time with your kids because you were already making enough to be able to spend more time with your kids.
That means you're being an a-hole.
Right. Back to that thing. So I see it in the financial side, how people blow themselves up with their actions in the 3 to 4 months that follow. Dr. Jeff, I know you've shared some anecdotes about events or things that people have thrown, and then you're telling them take a break. I mean, those are not maybe your words, but I'll let you say it in a more eloquent way, an articulate way.
Yeah, the thing that I want to say here is that The most vulnerable time of anybody's life is that when we feel that we've arrived or we've hit a milestone. And so what I want to say here is that, and this is not a shameless plug, but Nick mentioned my event coming up on January 14th and 15th. And, with permission, I'd just like to say, look at you guys, is that like, if you want to avoid ruin, we're going to talk about this very subject. It's how do you carry maximum momentum forward? I mean, if we don't get this right, then nothing else matters because you're not going to get to the finish line anyhow. I mean, that's the reality of this. And when we have the wind at our back, maybe that's the time we should actually pause and step back and not push harder. And so I'm just suggesting if there's any way, this is up to you. It's not a plug, but I care enough about everybody to know that if you don't get this right, please don't learn this the hard way, because you can lose 2 or 3 decades, can be absolutely wiped off the face of your legacy by one amateurish mistake because you don't know when to stop or when to pull back. And that's usually when you think that you have every reason to proceed ahead. I've only seen this like a freaking million times, and I don't want that to be one of your statistics that you have to now live with for the rest of your life. I don't want that for you.
I'll say this real quick before Dr. Jeff has to jump, because
sorry, man. It's like,
this is the hardest. Yeah, and I'll be there. I'll be at Dr. Jeff's event, and I've told people if you go and you let me know, I'll go a day early. I'll stay a day late. If you just want to hang out and spend some time, strongly recommended. I think I haven't looked. There's 3 to 5 spots left. We got a nice space. Well, Jeff's wife found a nice space anyway. It's the hardest thing because scrutiny and expectation, back to Randy, right? But when people, it's a highest month paradigm too. You see this trajectory and you extrapolate it out.
Totally.
And then everybody else sees it. And a lot of times they see like, oh, free ride for me too. And they're going to, we should do this. We should do that. And they're going to push and they're going to tell
Parkinson's law steps in and starts spending more.
Dude, for sure. I call this best year, worst year. I see this all the time. Like, let's take athletics, for example. A guy has the best year in his career. And then what happens, he starts changing everything, right? And then so the next year he tries to get even better. So what happens? He actually goes worse. It's actually the reverse of what you expect that you're going to get from doing it. So all I'm saying is that, please, when I get worried is when I hear someone say, I want to go for more. That scares the crap out of me. Or I want to mount a comeback. I want to make up for what I thought that I lost. That scares the crap out of me, because I know the risk, the probability of that happening is about minus 1,000%. Just frickin' don't do it. I actually had a guy, the most talented athlete in a sport, come to me and said, everybody knows I'm the greatest underachiever in my sport, and I'm frustrated by this, and I don't understand why I can't get better. I said, well, you're trying too hard to get better. Therefore, there's no opportunity for you to grow, because it's in the pauses where you build back better. And you're not giving yourself that. He said, well, can you work with me? I said, yeah, I'm going to work with you, and it's going to cost you this amount of money. It was like into the very high 6 figures. I said, I'm only going to do one thing. See this phone right here? Is that when you're tempted to do more, you're going to call me up and I'm going to talk you out of it. That's the only thing that I'm going to do for the next year. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no, you're already doing enough. I'm going to talk you out of everything that you want to do extra. And he had the best year of his career, and he completed his career like multi-million dollars and beyond. I'm not showcasing myself on this. I'm anonymous. All I want to say is that the things that we think to be true sometimes aren't. And let's make sure that we're really clear on what the delivery probability is for those things, especially when we're feeling just a little bit too good. Give you another example about Lance. It's like, no secret, I work with Lance at all 7 of his Tour de France victories. And I was talking with Lance once. I said, how's it going? And Lance said, almost too good. Now, this is a guy that gets it, because he was too fit too early, and he had to pull back and detune himself. You know the risk of that? When you have to detune yourself, when you're seeing everybody else start to come up, that's like seeing, I guess, a peak in crypto or something where you get the word from on high, like from Nick, like, wait a minute, hold on, false start, pull back, pull back, pull back. You know how hard that is? Well, that's exactly what Lance did. He pulled back, he held himself back so that he could peak at the right time. So please just know that when you think that it's sometimes the most important place to push ahead, it may be the exact time when you need to pull back. That's when you need to seek a Dan. That's what I do. If I have a problem with accounting, I go to Dan. He's the guy I go to. Why do I try to play my own doctor in this situation? No way. If I have another problem, I'm going to go to Nick. I'm going to go to the highest voices in the land to make sure that I really see reality for what it is, because I'm unwilling to risk a presumption about what I think to be true, especially when I'm too hungry. Look, we all like the taste of chocolate in our mouth, right? Especially when we've been on a diet, carrot and celery sticks. You know, we've gone through some lean times, had a bite of chocolate. You don't want to go back to celery sticks and carrots. But I'm telling you, when life is almost too good, that's the time that you want to stop. You want to get expert consultation. That's all I have to say. Would love to have you, if you would consider Nick's offer of attending my event. It's not pitching the event. I care enough about you is that I don't want to see you walk yourself off a cliff. I hope that wasn't too aggressive, Nick, but
Nope,
that's the way I feel about it, man.
I'll put a link again, Telegram channel. I'll put a link in the description later today.
Right.
So here's what and Dr. Jeff, thank you so much. I know you got to jump. Just to tie this home, because we got Jeff Moore here, and I want to give Dan a little bit more time because a lot of the stuff that I've said is a version of what I've done observing, or either watching Dan do office days or just chatting. And Steve Sims and Jeff Spencer are both gifts, and they were both gifted to me by Jeff Moore, who is joining us now. So, but real quick, you see, just to highlight, high month paradigm, best month, worst month. Dan came up with the high month paradigm well before he knew Dr. Jeff Spencer. Dr. Jeff Spencer recognized, observed best month, worst month well before he knew Dan. So this is what I explained in Nicsmas. You see these concepts over and over. They use different language, but if you pay attention, you will find these patterns at the highest level from people that have observed over time. And then it's just a matter of, getting the language down and really understanding it. So I just wanted to highlight that again, because it does show up over and over and over. And like we talked about Nicsmas, on the other side of any peak is a valley. One of the most difficult things for me when I went pro in strongman and I totaled elite in 2 weight classes, and I was top 5 as a 220 powerlifter at one point. And it was going through, and I had phenomenal coaches and mentors, just like working with Dan, just like working with Dr. Jeff, always seeking the best. And the hardest thing was, man, I'm training with the people I'm going to compete against, and they're stronger than me right now. And they would say, good. What do you mean good? Like, you don't want to be stronger than them today. You want to be stronger than them on the competition day. That is the only day it matters. And what's going to happen is they're pushing really hard. They're going to peak too soon. What's on the other side of a peak is a valley. So just, you see these patterns. It's another version of readiness. It's another version of holding back and understanding when you got to show up, it matters. You got to show up when it matters. It just happens over and over and over. That said, I would love to welcome one of my dearest friends, my partner in the network. Probably did watch Nicsmas, Jeff Moore. You got to mute yourself, homie.
There we go. Yeah, I certainly did watch live or replays when I possibly could, and have been part of either a participant or a viewer, student of all 3 of these, and so it's been a great experience, because like we said yesterday, you never step in the same river twice. And so even when I do hear something that you've said before, I'm able to associate it with who I am today. And it's just it's like this discovery that never stops. It just keeps going. And I appreciate you letting me come in today instead of tonight, for the very reason that I have still all my family, my kids at home right now. And this is going to be the last night some of my kids are going to be there. So I figured that I was going to prioritize family, as I should. And so I needed to do that this morning instead. So thank you.
Well, that would be based on the Nicsmas 2021 criteria. That would be not being an asshole, if that's what's important to you.
It
So
would be aligned. I'm still an asshole. I'm just more aligned.
I don't know if you saw this quote earlier. I don't know if you were watching. Best compliment to me is you write with your scars. Everything else is just verbiage.
Well,
By
you know
Nassim
me.
Taleb.
You know me. I share my scars with you frequently, and with the people in Thursday Night Boardroom and the network on a regular basis, and as if I'm reliving them again. As a matter of fact.
What I would love to do, because I want to respect Dan's time. I know he's got family stuff. Is if you don't mind, because you are one of the most. We always talk about safety or vulnerability, and you're one of you, Dr. Jeff, and a few others are just open about life experience and lessons. You look back on 2020. You say one way you could say after watching Nicsmas 2021, "Ooh, I've kind of been an asshole in this way, and this is what I'm going to do moving forward in 2022." Keep just short insight there, and then because you are the best question asker I know. I think about who's the best in the world at this. Asking questions and crafting compelling introductions. I think you are the best in the world.
Right.
I would
Thank you.
love for you to question Dan about the upcoming CCA.
Okay.
So first, if you just want to share, if you're willing, say this is how I've been an asshole this year, and 2022 I'm going to prioritize differently, or I'm going to recognize this, or whatever it is.
I can seriously give you something that is so frequent, or I'm sorry, recent to what's happening, and that is this during this last month has been a month of radical change. We moved from Yorba Linda. We've lived up in the North Orange County area for over 30 years, and now moved down to Corona Del Mar, and at the beach where we're always walking, and the area, Nick, where I am, and it's just walking distance now. Don't have to drive to some of these great paths and stuff, and so very fortunate for that. My daughter, we weren't able to attend her wedding last year that was in Half Moon Bay, because that county has been on lockdown ever since the beginning of this and really hasn't even let up. And it went to being, having to be able to have like 30 people at the wedding to having 10. And so we had our kids, our daughter and her husband, have the friends that were flying in for this, and just to make that a special occasion. And so they redid their vows 2 weekends ago. And so moving in, doing the redo of the vows up in Santa Barbara, having the kids all in the house now, a very different scene, going from 3,500 square feet to 1,900 square feet. And I was very much enthralled and involved, and going deep into Nicsmas, and going deep into what I was doing for business. And I will tell you that as a father attending daughter's wedding, or re-wedding, if you will, the redo, the restatement of the vows, and then father being with all the kids at home, they don't want me to be Thursday Night Boardroom dad. They don't want me to be network guy. They don't want me to be talking, hey, let me share what happened at Nicsmas today, even though I think it's life-changing. And you talked about this the other day. It lacked a lot of context, and and who I needed to show up as. And honestly, my kids want me to show up as dad. Let's go out with dad. Let's let not the intense dad that is thinking about the next day and the next move, and evolving and doing all these types of things. Let's just hang with dad and just have fun. And I really missed some of that during this time. And it translated into my wife being upset with me, and my kids not being happy with me. And I literally sent them out a text, each one of them, and I just said, I'm sorry, you deserve better. I will be better. And, you know, to go back, if this was 2 years ago, Nick, I would have continued to beat myself up about it. I would have been sulking. I would, you know, it would have been like, hey, you know, are you okay? I would have been looking for recognition that it's okay. But it was that, how can I be better? And just asking myself some very important questions. What is it you can do to be better today? And a very simple answer, which is usually the simple answer is the right one, was be present for them. Be interested in them. I'm always saying the most interesting guy at a party is the most interested guy at a party. And I've violated all of it. And so, as evolving at 57 years old, I still feel like I'm a kid because I hang around with this fucking 32-year-old. And, you know, I still feel so young, and so many new things that are happening. And I said it yesterday in the VIP section is, you know, how different would my life be if I would have known Nick, or I was taught this 10 years ago, and it would have been massively different. But instead of looking back at the way my life could have been, I need to step and look back and be right in the present moment and say, what can I do right now to make my life better than it was yesterday? What can I use from Nick? How can I respect the time that I'm spending on Nicsmas and the energy that Nick is expending on Nicsmas, and utilize this to be better than I was, and continue to follow that trajectory. And so that's really kind of for me right now what I've done, what I'm doing to make most of 2020 and 2021. I think that, you know, you introduced yourself as the sculptor back in 2020 about getting rid of the things that don't matter. Now it's about taking those things that do matter and utilizing them, and not allowing yourself to fall back into the depth of being an asshole, if you will.
It makes me so happy that people are saying that. I have so many tweets, like the word, you could search the word asshole on Twitter and they probably all come back to my my handle.
Start hashtagging asshole.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I know we'll talk about Thursday Night Boardroom maybe after Dan jumps, because it's the place where once a month we get together, we just talk about this stuff. Jeff's been doing it for 10, 11 years. And we have one coming up, so we'll make sure we invite everybody. But again, I would love, and if you watched Nicsmas, I would probably watch that part again and just what Jeff just said, because I think it's really powerful. I just saw some of the comments on the YouTube. So thank you for sharing. But now, because you are the greatest question asker I know, and we do have the CCA coming up, and we have a lot of questions. We have a few spots left, which is basically access to everything we're talking, mastering all the things we're talking about, really getting closer to things that matter to you. And then if you choose, turning around and helping other people. We talk about the marketing and the sales, and you know how to influence people to come into your world and all that stuff so that you can help them. But I would love for you to take, I think Dan has about 15 minutes. Just do your thing, and I just want to sit back and see how Dan answers questions, because it's always fun to watch for me.
Okay.
Put us on the spot. Beth, how you doing? Your story as a dad resonated with me for sure. I certainly have those moments. The danger with becoming enlightened is that sometimes it can make you more of an asshole.
It just makes you impatient with people that aren't, and those are usually the people that are closest to you.
For sure.
You know,
the
old saying.
It was. I'll just share real quick, because I'm not a dad, so I can imagine. I observe, but it's that diffusion of innovation when that. You know, the difference between information and innovation.
Yeah.
You realize, like, I'm so excited because I closed this gap of uncertainty. I want to share it with other people, and I turn around and share it with other people, and I'm just widening the gap. And now there's all this anxiety. I can't imagine having, you know, Dan has 2 kids, Jeff has like 11 kids. Just the complexities that would come from, and the stress and anxiety. So go ahead, carry on. I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's, you know, there's an old saying, and I'm not trying to liken myself to this person, but Jesus is only a man in his own hometown, right? He's not the Messiah. And, your kids look at you as dad. They don't look at you as any other thing that qualifies you in any other way. And the best thing you can do is to be the best dad you can be, to be interested and present in what they are. And, I see a lot of people with young kids talk about what it is to be a father or a parent. And I kind of smirk a little bit because I'm like, until you have teenagers, you ain't even in the fucking big leagues yet, pal. So,
well, that's terrifying to hear, Jeff. My kids are, oh, we lost you.
I have four adult children who've all graduated from college, and they possess a certain skill that I'm proud of, and they all are grinders in the fact that they identify with what they want and they go at it. And I've seen a lot of parents enabling out there going, oh, well, they worked very hard in college, they need to take some time off. And I watch my kids just go, fuck that. What, are you kidding me? And so I'm real proud of my kids, and I just, I commit to them, I commit to you guys to be a better father to those people and a better husband. Not that I'm shitty. I want to be better. And so that's good. But Dan, let's talk about CCA, because I do believe that this is something of not only a part that reveals things to people, to themselves, but is creating a skill set that has been born of many, many years of your own development, and mentors. Who is, in your opinion, if there's a person that you would identify, I don't know if it needs to be a profession, but the type of person that is best suited for CCA?
Ooh, good question. So our whole positioning is around the purpose-driven entrepreneur. And I said that to my wife a couple of years ago, and she's like, what does that even mean? Purpose-driven entrepreneur. And because it's a term that we made up. And the idea is that your business and any assets that you own, it could be rental properties, it could be investments in crypto, they all serve a purpose. And that purpose is to get you closer to the things that you actually want, which requires you to get clarity on the things that you want. So for some of us, we started a business because we wanted freedom, maybe freedom from having a boss, having things that are less time dependent in terms of 9 to 5, 8 to 5 sort of stuff. Maybe it's because we wanted to redefine an industry. Maybe we wanted to be viewed in a certain way. Maybe it was just a means to an end. But there's a reason why. If we bought some rental properties, there's a reason why. If we invested in crypto, there's a reason why. I'm not interested in working with folks who just want an arbitrary goal like 100 million in revenue. Have a Fortune 500 company. I've done that work in my previous life. I was miserable because everything was so arbitrary. And when things are arbitrary, you're a commodity. Right? Okay. Because I just need to find someone else that can get me there, get me this arbitrary number. So I'm interested in helping those folks who really, really want to get clarity on what they want, align their business and assets to get them there, and then where possible, help other people reinvent that methodology to help other people in their area of expertise.
Is that where the certification is? They become certified in?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So if you want to, you could just take the methodology and apply it to yourself and to your life, and it ends there. And that's totally fine. And that can help you get there faster and with less risk, less effort. Perfect. There are other folks who want to take it and apply it to their specific industry and reinvent to a degree the methodology. And so they're the last cohort of students, they're taking the certification and the content and they're repackaging it and applying it to copywriting or marketing or operations systems, etc. And to me, that's wonderful because all these ideas and things that we packaged in CCA, these are ideas that I got reinvented from other people. They aren't necessarily my ideas. And that's been a theme we've seen where Dr. Jeff, Randy, yourself, Nick, in our different disciplines, we have similar concepts. We refer to it differently, but they're similar. They're almost the same concept, maybe just different labeling. Right. So really, I package this stuff up from things that I learned, and it only benefits the system at large if other people take this content, CCA, repackage it, reinvent it, pay it forward themselves.
Okay, and if there's a person that you would discourage from being in CCA, who would that be?
Yeah, Randy talks about you mentioned this a little bit about with your kids having grit, that he always says, I'd rather have to take something out than put something in. Right. So my kids, I'm starting to see it, they're 6 and 8, very competitive. I have an unhealthy relationship with competition. I got that from my dad, who has an even unhealthier relationship with competition. If you're going to go into the CCA, you got to be prepared to play a different game. You're going to go on, we talk about it the first 2 weeks, hero's journey. So you're now on a path that your friends, they may not understand you as much anymore, right? Because you're acting a little bit differently, you're thinking differently, you're not following conventional norms. We provide a bunch of support around helping with confidence and playing your game. That's almost every class. That's the through line, is play your game. But you have to be willing to go on this hero's journey of sorts. And I'll reference one of I lost you here for a second. I'll reference one of the principles we talk about: never water the weeds, which is, I watched my neighbors put in a really fancy sprinkler system in their backyard, but they didn't pull out any of the weeds. And so over the course of the summer, it's like your yard got substantially worse, because now you've got an automated system to water all these weeds, right? So they got further away from what they wanted. Here in the CCA program, you have to be prepared to go on this hero's journey and identify the weeds that you're watering, and then take action to try to eliminate those things from your to the extent possible. So we're going to ask you to journal.
Not look for people that are defending their limitations, that they're actually.
That's right.
They're open. They're open to evolving.
That's right. I know that, and I for a while I used to get frustrated with this. I'd go over to in my younger years. I'd go over to parties that my wife's friends would throw, and all her friends' husbands would be there. And I hated going because I had nothing in common with all the other boyfriends and husbands, et cetera, that are there. And for a number of years, I'm sort of a type of person that kind of internalizes things, and my default is often, what do I need to do differently? Like, it's an issue that I need to solve. Why is it that I don't seem to relate to any of these guys here? What do I need to do differently? And largely with the help of Randy and playing my game, what I realized is I'm just a different dude. Like, I just think about things differently. I want different things than the norm, and I've kind of always been that way. But it took a long time to embrace that, to recognize that that's actually a good thing. So if you're going to join the CCA, you're going to have this similar inflection point, which is you have to recognize how you were different and be willing to accept that. And if you want to defend your current position, and if you want to just get better at the things you're already doing, and get more entrenched in your current beliefs, this is going to be the worst program for you possible, because we're going to shine the light on your greatest strengths, but often your greatest strengths are also your greatest weakness. So you have to acknowledge both ends of the spectrum in that regard.
I always say talk about the window in the mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you think about if you're not willing to consider all those things out there that, like, you're not willing to consider this might be a mirror, do not join the CCA, because it will be painful for you and for us.
So when we're talking about people that influence us, they're usually the closest people around, and making a decision to somebody that I'm joining the CCA because, what is that big promise that a successful semester, student, what is the big promise a successful student can
Yeah.
expect?
Yeah, the biggest promise is to basically build a operating system or toolkit that you're going to build a business and or life on your terms. On your terms. Least amount of risk, least amount of effort to get there.
And to be able to have a system that can be remodeled and taught to others as your own.
That's right. Yep. You can take it, reinvent it. We're going to teach you 12 core principles to navigate all these what I call preference-based decisions. Should I join the CCA? Well, that's a preference. There's not a right or wrong. Should I like mayo? Well, I would argue no, it's the worst condiment. But a lot of you probably like mayo, right? That's a preference. We get into a lot of these arguments that are preferences, and we behave like they're a fact, like there is a right or wrong. So the point of that is that business and life is a complex, dynamic system, and most of the answers are it depends. It depends on what do you want?
Yeah.
And how do you get closer to that? So it's and here's the extra dynamic complexity in the it depends is what you want today might be diametrically opposed to what you want a year from now.
Absolutely.
So the dynamic element is that it's a moving target is the point I'm trying to make. And you don't know until you get closer. I give this anecdote. Sorry, I know you have another question, but just really briefly. We've in my CPA firm business, the first step is to build these roadmaps, and we'll talk to folks about what I call their profit priorities. Basically, we're trying to create this solvable equation for them. What are all the things that you want? When do you want it by? How much does it cost? And then what are your current resources? We take all that and we could solve for how long is it going to take you to get there, and then how can we get you there faster by re-engineering your cash flow, paying less in tax, etc. I mentioned that because years ago, talked to a lady who said, my number one priority is that I inherited this farm from my family in Ohio. It has some debt still on it. I want to pay off that farm. That's my number one priority. And then we went through the list, and it's like number 5 is I want to move to California. Okay, so number 1, pay off a farm. Number 5, move to California. And there was a bunch of stuff in between. We go through the process, the roadmap at the end, based off our current resources and how we re-engineer stuff, we could pay off the farm. Here, make this move right now. You can pay off the farm. And what did she say? I want to move to California.
Yeah.
So because at the end of the day, we don't know till we're there, and we vote with our money. So the answer reveals itself when you're there. And so we have to build a system that allows the flexibility and freedom to know that we think we know the answer, but we have so many biases built on top of biases on top of biases that until we have to vote with our money, we can't be 100% certain of the answer.
Yep. True. That's cool. That's very cool. I like what you just said also about, what you want to do today is not necessarily what you want to do a year from now. It can be diametrically opposed, is the word you used. And I remember Nick telling me a long time ago, back in November of 2018, that I'm not willing to do anything that I'm not willing to do for the rest of my life. And I'm like, wow, so he's going to do this for the rest of his life. And he's like, no. It just means that I'm not going to do it unless I can do it for the rest of my life. I have reserved the right to change my mind and my trajectory and my positioning anytime I want, but that one criteria is, if this thing that I'm about to start doing, can I do it for the rest of my life? And I think what you've done is you've been able to put not only that kind of sentiment into it, the recognition that you can change, but through CCA, an individual has a system to which they're able to apply any direction that they want to take and be able to take that direction in the most certain way possible and ultimately collapsing time
It's-
to achieve what they want.
It's a superpower that most people will never have, and they will be a-holes because of it, because they'll blame everybody else.
Right.
The ability, and it's not overnight, but the ability, you do discern this. Like Dan does this quickly. I think I do this pretty quickly. Dr. Jeff does it quickly, to go, okay, this is where you're actually at. This is where I want to be. Boom, close the gap, and also discern when priorities have changed and reset really quickly. Like, it is a toolbox to get what you want, and then teach others. And if you are, I'll share this while Dan's here, because this is a unintended. If I didn't think about this the first time at CCA, there are people like Dr. Jeff Spencer potentially, and that their biggest value that they add to the world, it's not super quantifiable, right? Like accounting is one thing, numbers, but there's things like mindset, performance, that it's not always super quantifiable. What the CCA has done is help people themselves and others identify something that is quantifiable, where you're at, where you want to be, and then what you can measure is that gap closing.
Proximity.
Right. And it's a ratio of different things depending on what matters to you. But now this thing that was unquantifiable before, we now see, okay, it was going to take me 10 years, but now it's going to take me 7. Holy shit. I paid 40 grand to get 3 years of my life back. That's a no brainer. Whereas before it was like, what did I pay 60 grand for? You know?
Yeah.
So
Nick, I think the operative word there, and it gets missed, is it. It helped me close down, which requires focus. It doesn't say these 200 things is going to help me close the gap. It is going to help me close the gap.
Yeah.
And I think that focus and depth is something that, instead of going wide, is going to absolutely close that gap. And I really like the fact that, it's an it, and you can systemize around an it without, with the fewer the variables, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I want to highlight one more thing, if it's okay with you guys, before I got to jump out of here in a moment. So one of the quotes that really anchors the CCA curriculum is this idea that every system is perfectly designed to create the outcome it's currently generating. So what does that mean? It means two things. Number one, if you don't like the outcome that you're getting, you either have to change the system, or number two, change the inputs into the system. Now, the reality is, in most things in life, we're not able to change the system. Take the tax code. I can't change the tax code. I can change the output if you're paying a maximum tax rate by changing the inputs, modify our behavior. So most things that we have to do to change the output is to modify the input, our behavior, into the system. Now, the critical mistake that I observe most people making is that they assume a couple of things. Number one, they assume that they're going to act free of biases. So I see a lot of stone throwing about how other people are biased, and the implication is that you yourself are not biased. So one is bias, and I'll come back to that element. The second is that they assume that they won't be able to operate at their maximum capability at all times. It's a rigid chaos model, right? And so that's like, and back to highest month paradigm and some of the things that Dr. Jeff was talking about. We build this system that effectively assumes that each day we will set a new PR, personal record, or at least maintain our previous PR, personal record. That would be like, I think of business as a sport, life is sort of a sport. That's like going into things, assuming that every day I'm going to run a marathon at the fastest time I've ever done it, or faster. So we built the system from the beginning, assuming personal records constantly, and that we're going to be free of biases. Now, that's a really, really fragile system. When the answer is not obvious, just do the opposite, right? Invert. That's from Randy via Charlie Munger via, 2,000 years of philosophy and a bunch of smart people, right? So what's a more efficient system to build? We'll do the opposite. One, build a system that doesn't require you to operate at your maximum. Build a system that allows you to operate at your baseline. So anything above that is just extra upside. This is how we manufacture asymmetry. is by building a system where we can operate at our baseline, not at our maximum. So that the days that we happen to be at our maximum just add even more upside. The same with biases is build a system that assumes that we're biased. So the best traders in the world, what do really well? They lock in losses faster.
Yep.
Counterintuitively.
Loss is your best loss.
Right? Because what they know is that there's some other investment out there that I can reallocate to that's going to get me back to where I need to be faster. I spent 10 years in derivatives, capital markets, hedging, all that sort of stuff. So I've seen it firsthand, the people that can lock in losses faster. Now, most of us have a very, very strong aversion to loss aversion. Right? We'll do almost anything imaginable to have to recognize a loss. That bias actually, counterintuitively, is burying us because we can get back to our baseline faster if we reallocated resources elsewhere. So there's all these biases. There's something called the mental accounting bias, which is just simply how we allocate our resources, allow us to make better decisions. All that to say, we spend over the through line of everything in the CCA is building that system for you that's dynamic. It recognizes that it depends on what you want in the future, but also recognizes we're not going to be running a PR every day. In fact, we don't want to. That's hard. We're going to burn out. And number two is how do we get consistent inventory over our biases and build a system that allows us to be biased, so that if we happen to not be biased, that's just additional upside again, which is how we manufacture asymmetry. So hopefully that was coherent.
Share this real quick before Dan jumps.
I got to jump too.
Your maximum achievability is not your maximum maintainability.
That's right.
It's one of the things that it's very tough.
We lock in by the way, every day when I'm trading, all the walking, flying, and swimming proteins, it is always about locking in our loss very quickly and turning it into money so we can invest it in something else. It's an everyday thing. So you couldn't be more right about that. And how when I owned my seafood company, we were super loss averse, and we stalled ourselves out of business. We ended up having to sell and not making a lot of money, just because we were super loss averse, or at least certain people in the company were loss averse.
That's where the allegiance capital can come into play. Yep. Because you let people know you give them that look around the corner in your business of this is how we're going to behave. But perhaps even more important is that you tell the people whose opinion you weight the most that you're going to be locking in losses. So it's really difficult. So my wife is not an entrepreneur whatsoever. She comes from a family of engineers. Her dad was an Air Force pilot and actuary. If you want to talk about linear, Air Force pilot and an actuary. Her brother is a rocket scientist at NASA. Very linear research. I call it Merrilling out. Her middle name or her maiden name is Merrill. And so I have a term Merrilling out, which is when you go scorched earth on details. Like you thought you had enough details, and then you go like 100 steps further past that. So that's what she comes from that background, and is a very sharp contrast to my sort of entrepreneurial life. And so perhaps most important is for me to let her know about losses and changes that I'm willing to make, because when you're used to a very linear path, like loss aversion is very, very difficult for you.
Right.
Like, what do you mean we're changing? We just got down this path of where you're disbanding this business, or I am, because I'm not going to name the puppy on these things. I don't know if you talked about naming the puppy name. Because what's best for us long-term to get us to where we want to be faster is that we make an adjustment. We take the data that we have today, and we knew from the beginning that this was a possibility.
Great. Yeah, that's again, shit I wish I'd have known 10 years ago.
The concept that I've shared, and then we'll take a short break here, because we do have the most legendary conversation recipe on the planet coming up here. We're gonna get Dr. Jeff and Randy together just to be a fly on the wall for that. But the concept. I didn't say. Sometimes I probably say in the wolf den, don't be so quick to name the puppy, but it's Dr. Jeff's deciding too far in advance what needs to happen and how it needs to happen. That decreases the probability greatly that you get what you want. The further out you name it, and the lower probability that you're able to see and discern, like be receptive to new information and then adjust. Because as Dan says, once you name the puppy, you really got no option but to take it home.
There you go.
Yeah, I really like imagery, so I have all these like never water the weeds and don't name the puppy and all that, because that triggers things in my brain faster for me to try to, as Jeff would say, move from human mindset to champion's mind. I'll just mention this name, elaborate on the name of the puppy, and then I gotta drop off and do some parenting stuff. Just for the imagery for everyone's benefit. So imagine you go to adopt a puppy and you walk into the pound, or you go to some breeder and they have a litter of puppies. Could be cat, could be any animal type, but let's just stick with dogs because dogs are better at preference. You go there and you see a puppy and you give it a name. Pickles is my dog's name. You see the dog there and you're like, oh, Pickles. Chances are that's now your dog. You just named that. It's now yours. And so once you give it a name, it becomes yours. And that's when loss aversion kicks in. Real estate agents try to do this, right? Great real estate agents. You start touring a house and they're getting you to go like, oh yeah, we're going to put our sofa here. This is going to be the kids' room. Because each of those are sort of naming the puppy where it's becoming more and more yours. And once it's yours, the loss aversion bias becomes that much stronger and harder for you to get rid of it because it was yours. Right. So we try to take inventory. Nick and I have this conversation all the time about ideas. And we'll say, or I'll say, it's like, I think I've named the puppy on this. And then he'll say, yeah, I think you have, or vice versa. And all that does is it just breaks the cycle. Okay, well, now that I've identified that I've named the puppy, does it actually make sense for us to proceed? Or am I just getting stuck on this thing because of loss aversion?
And that's get about one more minute and then we'll take a break here.
All right, I'll see you.
That's the power of the CCA, right? Is you develop a shared language, and what maybe you would get stuck on for 6 or 7 or 8 months going the wrong direction. We now have a framework and a community where you could just say, no, you name the puppy, and you go, oh shit. And then you just go back to the frameworks and you can reason through it and quickly discern, oh, that's not a good idea at all. And just save half a year of your life. So I am going to use the restroom real quick and prepare for our next guest. Let's go 5 minutes. We'll be back here. Yeah.
Nick, you just want to make sure that everybody, and we'll announce it in the Telegram, that January 6th, we're going to go deeper and continue to go deep in this.
That's a Thursday,
yeah.
Right? So January 6th on Thursday, go to Facebook. I'll put a link. Find Thursday Night Boardroom or go to thursdaynightboardroom.com. We're going to, at about 6 p.m. Pacific, fire up, Jeff's going to fire up a Zoom, and we're going to go really deep into after, because we'll have Nicsmas, and then we're going to have a week, almost 2 weeks to sleep on it, to think about it, to test it out. And then we're going to do a deep dive on it with Jeff.
All right, guys. Thanks, Nick. Hey, happy birthday, happy Nicsmas, and I'll talk to you soon, pal. Yes, sir. Appreciate you. And I will be back in 3 to 5 minutes, and we're just going to keep rolling. I'm just going to keep the YouTube live. Play your game, and if you can be a fly on the wall for this next conversation, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend it.
All right. I'm looking at the, let me fix my screen here. This is all gold. I feel like I stuck into a party I was never going to be invited to. That's so I'll tell you where I kind of got this idea a little bit from. When I met Steve Sims, I was a guest of Jeff Moore's to Steve's birthday party, and this is what he did on his birthday for Steve. He just sat around and he did hot seats and just shared stuff like this. Had his friends, the founder of Uggs and Tim Larkin and people like that, Greg Reed, all sharing lessons. I was like, that's a really cool way to spend your birthday. And then COVID hit and all that stuff. So this has been awesome. Thank you. Yeah, of course. And we got a little bit more coming. Let's say another 35, 40 minutes, and then we'll wrap up the AM session. I'll send out some details about the PM session, see if people are interested in doing the PM session. It's typically a little bit more intimate, vulnerable, because it's not recorded, it's not public. So you get some insight and some knowledge. But most of the people at the highest level, this is one of my BS meters. At the highest level, people share some real shit, and it's not a well thought out, rags to riches story. It's like some shit. So glad you guys are here. Well, let me read the comments real quick, and let me make sure that our guests have the links they need to join us. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, drop in I'm just going to scroll through the comments really quick. Like January 6th locked in. Awesome. Thursday night. Let me see here. Let me make sure the URL works, because it's not mine. I don't have control over it. It's Jeff's. Jeff Moore. Last Thursday of every month. So you can just go to Facebook, you can search Thursday Night Boardroom. ThursdayNightBoardroom.com should work. It's not loading for me, but I'll let Jeff know. That's not my problem. And we just once a month. Typically it's the last Thursday of every month. Because of the holidays, we're doing it the first Thursday of next month. Holidays are always weird like that. I also do the Wolf Den Town Hall on the last Thursday of every month, because I know I'm going to be in town and I'm going to be here for Thursday Night Boardroom. That's why I put the Wolf Den Town Hall on that date. Always a plan. At least I pretend there is. There's never actually a plan. So let me look at is the boardroom on the 6th open to everyone here? Yes, the boardroom it's invite only, but it's open to everybody. Typically, it's only been in person, right? COVID, we changed that. So it used to be at my California office. Before that, Jeff did it at his office. And then, so typically it's been in person. We have anywhere between like 15. We've had 30 people in the room, but we've been doing it remote. As long as people show up, you can be a fly on the wall. You can participate as long as you're respectful. Anybody's welcome, whether you own a business or not, it doesn't matter. And it's pretty much like what we've done here. The difference is I don't lead it. Jeff leads it. And this was wrapped in the context of Nicsmas, meaning we had 11 days of conversation to kind of wrap context around it and have a shared language. Thursday Night Boardroom is just wide open to anybody and everybody. It's help solve problems. So you guys are welcome to be there. I can't recommend enough the CCA. I'm going to talk about it today. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow, and then I'm probably not going to talk about it for another year. Of course, people will see other people talking about it, but very, very powerful program. And we're going to work on Dr. Jeff is a contributor. He's got about 3 or 4 weeks that he's leading and teaching and providing support and homework. Randy is there for every single session. I'm going to introduce you to Randy in a minute. Randy was a senior advisor to Bill Gates in the 90s. He only works the top 1% of the top 1%. Dan is a client of his. He's become a good friend of ours, heavily influences a lot of the thinking, a lot of the frameworks that I've shared. Happy birthday. Thank you for doing this. Yeah, appreciate that. I probably wouldn't remember how old I am if I didn't do Nicsmas every year. Always ask me, I always forget. Let me go. I'm looking through comments here, see if I missed anything. Share your biggest takeaways too. Either you could tweet them or drop them in the comments here. The takeaways. It's always some of the frameworks that we come up with and the lessons and stuff. They almost always come from takeaways. Always come from reading feedback or fielding questions. Cool. Let me see. Let me line up our guests here. I got to let them in, orient them. Again, we're going to have Dr. Jeff Spencer and Randy Massengale. Of course, we got to count on them figuring out the technology. It's always something we got to account for. I'm reading the comments here. When I decided to sell the sand, but his husband saw it as quitting, their risk factor to go forward. You'll see that communication is the biggest thing, and we talked about this in the past. Communication is the biggest thing. So Allegiance Capital, step one is knowing yourself. Going through Nicsmas, this is my opinion, of course. You go through Nicsmas, you learn yourself, about yourself, what really matters to you, and you realize you got to change direction. Then it's the conversations. It's the communication that's the hardest part, because some people say, oh, you're quitting. Some people say, well, because they see the trajectory and they've already named the puppy for you. And they don't understand why you're not going that way, because they already decided you want to go, they want you to go that way and all this stuff. So you got to communicate. The next level of that evolution is Allegiance Capital. Where now, Dan does this really well. I work on this really hard. Is I know myself. I know my cycles. I know my personality. I know my personal rhythms. So I'm telling you, this may happen around this time. Do not be surprised. So now the first time around, when you recognize I'm being an a-hole and I got to change direction, you have to communicate it to people. And it's really coming out of left field. You have to work really, really hard on those crucial conversations. But every time around, those conversations get easier if you practice Allegiance Capital. If they are surprised that it happened, but you told them 6 months, a year, 2 years ago, hey, this might happen, then it's on them, right? It's not as much on you. So it's really about doing what you can do. And the communication is not necessarily when you realize something in real time. That is a time to communicate. But we can go a step further and we say, okay, I know this about myself. I have these cycles. I have these rhythms. I don't see myself doing this forever. I need to live in this quadrant. If you saw Nicsmas, you know what I'm talking about. I know that when this activity is no longer in this quadrant, I'm not going to be interested in it. So the thing for me to do, the ethical thing for me to do that'll also reduce friction later on, is to let people know that it's very possible that even though I'm super interested in this right now, it's very possible that I lose the level of interest that I have. And it's not because I'm quitting. It's not because I'm lazy. It's not because I just tell people I'm lazy, because I understand I'm not willing to communicate with the whole world. I communicate with a few people that matter. I tell everybody else I'm lazy. I'm not going to go out and fight a war trying to convince people I'm not lazy, right? What I know is that I need to live in this quadrant. So yeah, I don't want to do this work. It's a disservice to you. It's a disservice to me. Most people won't understand that. I'm okay with that. So I say, I'm lazy. I don't want to do it. That's something that they can understand. It's fine. Right. So, but the further along you go and the better you understand yourself and the more data you get about yourself, the more you can get ahead of this stuff. Right. So hopefully that makes sense. All the stuff that you're facing right now, which I'm seeing in the comments and the 6-word updates, like it's a reasonable thought to think like, shit, is it going to be this difficult every time I want to pivot, or every time I realize something new about myself? And like, no, it doesn't have to be, because you can get ahead of it. You can let people know it's coming because you know yourself well enough to know what might be around the corner. Dr. Jeff earlier said, Nick has this clairvoyance. And a lot of that just comes from, I spend a lot of time really trying to understand myself and the people around me and how they perceive things. So it's less being able to see around corners and more about understanding how all these parts interact and articulating it so that other people think I can see around corners. But we're all very predictable. Just not all on the same time preference, meaning day to day, I might do the same thing for 6 months and then just change. And that seems very unpredictable. But if you zoom out, I might have 6 month cycles. It was super predictable that I was going to change what I'm doing every 6 months. It's not 6 months for me. It's about 2 years. It's about 2 years. And my brain works in like 12-week cycles. Well, I don't know if that's natural or trained, but you guys can identify those things about yourself. Both quotes I've noted came from Dan. Don't water the weeds. Yep. That's a concept in CCA. It's a very powerful one. And don't name the puppy. Yep. The way that I say the same concepts is appreciate when bad things don't happen or avoid bad things. And don't decide too far in advance. Don't decide what it has to be too far in advance. Same concepts, different language. Again, consistency at its core. Some things are coming together, whether it's communicating, internal checks, applying processes, consistency and predictability. Yep. Keep in mind that consistency, and I'm just rambling to kill time here, consistency and predictability does not have to be the same thing, right? You can know it. Dan has said this to me. He said, I know about every 2 years, you kind of get bored and jump industries. And when I moved to Seattle, we share an office. He said, I'm expecting in about 2 years, you probably get bored and have to, do something else. And crypto had I got into crypto. So it's not predictable in that we don't have to know how it's going to happen. We don't have to name the puppy on what it's going to be and how it's going to, you can reliably just have these cycles, right? Yes. Name the weeds and water the puppies. That is the most efficient path forward. So it's just understand that like people find comfort in consistency, which makes sense. Certainty, right? People prefer the certainty of misery to the misery of uncertainty. So you are going to want, so the myth is reliability. Do the same thing every day. You should be predictable because that's what everybody else wants. Everybody just wants to know what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. It feels safe to them. Let me introduce somebody. And here he is. If he can connect to audio. There we go. The man himself.
Hey,
Randy, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing just amazingly well. I don't know if it's because all my kids showed up for the holidays or that they're all going back. I can't tell which one I'm more excited about.
You can be equally excited about both.
Yeah, I can. It's just been a phenomenal time. Just reflecting on what's happened this year. It's just been amazing.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of context because
okay.
I've told all the other guests and everybody watching. So first of all, just to repeat myself, everybody else heard me say this. The three of us, I just invited Dr. Jeff Spencer.
Hey, there we go.
Hey, all right.
Hey, Randy, how you doing, man?
Good. The party can start now.
All right, man.
You're in, yeah.
You're wearing your red. This means trouble.
So we're on Zoom, and just so you're aware, we are also streaming on YouTube, and these are getting about 500 to 700 views a day. So just nothing incriminating, or just be aware it's out there. And I introduced you a little bit, and Dan just left. I was hoping Dan would still be here. So really quick, I introduced Jeff Spencer earlier. Randy has not gotten as much FaceTime in my world as Jeff because I work very closely with Jeff, but everybody just heard from Dan. I talk about Dan all the time. And Dan talks about Randy all the time. So a lot of the frameworks, a lot of the things that we're trying to amalgamate and pull together and make actionable or practically applicable, they're coming from these two individuals right here. the Dr. Jeff, who I'm talking to many hours a week, and Randy Massengale, who only works top 1% of the top 1%, and that is indeed Dan Nicholson. Definitely falls into that category.
No question.
And I spent the last 11 days just really I called it DALA. Nicsmas is Dala. So it's directions for acting like an adult, or don't act like an asshole. So people can pick which one. And I wrapped it in context. Look, I'm not here to call everybody an a-hole. I'm saying if you don't know who you are, you don't know how to play your game, and you don't know what you want, and you're floundering around complaining about stuff, putting stuff in, as you would say, maybe putting it in the trunk instead of the tank, and you're complaining that you're not getting the things you want out of life, you are being an a-hole, and you're doing it to yourself.
Absolutely.
Right. So what I would love to do, just because I know you're on limited time, and for those, Randy facilitates, teaches, helps structure, and provides a tremendous amount of support in the CCA. The only reason we did the CCA is because we had Randy's support. He's incredible at making curriculum. So for those of you on the fence, CCA, just listen to this conversation. My request is that the two of you, as openly as you're willing to be, as vulnerable, as open, discuss either examples of your highest performing clients, or Randy works with some corporations, same with Jeff. What are the ways that we'll group 2020 and 2021 together, because with COVID, it's just kind of one big blur to me. You see that people are putting stuff, and I would love for you to talk about the tank in the trunk too.
Mm-hmm.
But how are people shooting themselves in the foot? How are they being an a-hole by complaining about all the things they don't have? And then you watch their behavior, and because of the wisdom that the two of you carry, you can recognize that behavior is diametrically opposed to the things you say you want. And a lot of that stuff's counterintuitive, right? I can only say it with confidence because it comes from people with experience that you two have, right? So if the two of you would just like to have a dialogue, maybe grill each other a little bit about mistakes that you've made by not playing your own game, recognizing where you're violating your own principles, or share some examples with some of your clients, I think that would be the most valuable thing for us to just sit back and be a fly on the wall for.
Well, I consider Jeff Spencer, although we don't get a chance to talk half as much as we should, but I get a chance. I consider him my mentor. And I say that is because we're both from Los Angeles.
That's it.
We talk about how his, like one of his early girlfriends in junior high.
That's right.
Her dad was my principal in high school.
That's right.
And so whatever lessons he taught Jeff rubbed off, it's still rubbing off on me. So it's just a delight to be on here with him, and I wish him happy holidays. And
back at you.
Just want to just sit at the foot of the master and take notes. And every time I'm with him, I'm supposed to be interacting. I end up taking notes, and I end up using them. But before Jeff gets started, I miss Dan. And I was going to say, one of the highest compliments I guess you can have as a coach, as a leader, when you're trying to inculcate lessons, is when the person that you've inculcated the lesson with uses that philosophy against you. So Dan was talking to me about doing some things for him, and including CCA. And he knew that I'm like ultra busy. I've flown out 6 times in the last 10 weeks. I've been in a different part of the country and working with executives and working with corporations and stuff. And so Dan, before the ink could dry on anything, he sent the money. And he said, some guy once told me that if you do a deal, you got to slam the door. So people can't get out. You just slam the door. I didn't know he'd use it on me. And so he slammed the door, and here I am. And it's great that he did that, because you can see the lessons that people learn. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. But Jeff, please start us off. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Randy. Big love back at you. I love the red color there. The thing that comes to me over the last 2 years is that number one, there's a tendency to obviously go into a state of shock when you're faced with the unknown, and fear is our greatest paralyzer. The fear of making the wrong choice. Maybe we have too many choices. I've never had a high performer when they fill out an application to work with me, when I ask them what they fear most, and they say letting people down. That's what they fear the most. And so when you're in a situation where you have to react, there is no option, and the risk of failure may be high because you're on unfamiliar territory. It's unprecedented. Actually, there's a tendency to not creep along or not move along. And what happens, windows start closing. And as the windows close, our apprehension goes up. And as our apprehension goes up, then our ability to think soundly starts to become compromised. Therefore, we create a positive feedback loop of desperation and urgency to prove and demonstrate our merit, but we're starting to lock up and becoming less confident in our ability. So for sure, the action that should have been applied, that needs to be applied, we talked about this earlier today, is that there needs to be, when you're in a situation where there's too many options or you're not sure, that's where you have to play what I call a soft offense. And what a soft offense is where you're putting gentle pressure on everything. We're not talking about a full court press, because your tendency is going to be to do a full court press to get the right answer quicker, to make yourself feel better and take some of the pressure off yourself. That's not a reason to take action. So therefore, let me give you an example. So I had someone that I was working with, there was a president of a university, and he said to me, I have too many options right now, and I have to select one of the many options. And what I do know is that there's only going to be one happy person in the decision that I make. Everybody else is going to be really disappointed. And so number one, I'm getting up at 1 a.m. and I'm walking around my house because I'm so anxiety ridden about the choice. I don't know what to do. And so I decided to go on a cleanse and get a new trainer to help me out. I said, well, that's not a good idea, because all you're doing is putting more stress on your body by going into a potential healing crisis while you're working out. The guy's trying to prove his merit. That's a really bad idea. So why don't you just go back to your baseline and face the boogeyman, right? And I said, the way that you want to play this is that you have all these options. You got 10 options, and they're all pretty good options. So I would suggest that on each of these that you put gentle pressure on it, meaning that when you put gentle pressure, not backing up, playing a prevent defense, waiting it to reveal itself to you, because it's not going to. But if you move ahead with it in a well-paced manner where you don't go too deep, too quick in over obligation or making a deal, but you're kind of hitting the ball across the net, waiting for it to send back to you its response to the lob that you put into it. So I said to the guy, go to all of these 10 options, and you tell them whatever the next step is that is part of your proposal that they need to inform you of. See how that's a soft offense? You're not commanding anything. You're not putting a full court press. You're not creating an oversense of urgency, but you're just putting a request on them that they have to respond to if they're going to still stay in the game. And so when that comes back, then you're going to get the next bit of information that you need to make a judgment against it. And eventually what's going to happen, that gentle offense, rather than everybody being in front of you at equal distance, some will start to recede into the back and some will start to move into the foreground. So as you continue to play this game by then lobbing back to them the next request from you, then things will start to line up where you'll eventually have one or two of the 10 being the finalist in the competition for your selection. And at that point, you're not going to be in too much of a hurry to get the answer too quickly. You're going to pull back and always give yourself the 24 to 48 hour rule. If you feel like you're ready to make a decision, you got to make sure it's not an impulse about fear of loss. You need to make sure that you're not doing it because you're, fearful of some type of, let's say, you will be ostracized from someone's life. It has to be for the right reason. And then once you know it's the right reason, then you have to calculate the language that you're going to use to accept the offer. And you're going to accept the offer using the language where you have the highest leverage to make sure that the rules of engagement are set up correctly the very first time. And that requires a massive amount of restraint, because, there's going to be pain either way. There's going to be pain if you take too long to decide, because people are going to run for the exits. Then you're going to start to condemn yourself, like, why didn't I take action sooner? You can see how that can happen. Then it's going to inspire you to try to take action to make up for what you think you lost, and then everything's going to get all screwed up. You don't want to do that. So you got to play the restraint game. You have to make sure your language is correct. You don't want to overreach. You don't want to do it to try to gain people's favor. You want to make sure it's the best decision for you because you vetted it correctly. Because if it's the best decision for you, then it's the best decision for everybody. And you have to play offense, because if you do not play offense at a certain point, people will not trust you as a leader. They will not trust you. And to get back what you lost through your indecision that didn't have to happen may cost you a little bit of everything in critical moments like this. So I can't emphasize enough, demonstrating restraint to make sure that the soft fence works in your favor. You don't want to go for a Hail Mary. You don't want to throw the bomb when you don't have to throw the bomb. You want to keep marching the ball down the field. You want to make sure that the ball's on your side of the court. So that's, and the guy did make the right decision, by the way. And just to say that this is what I saw as probably one of the most important skills that I saw that could have been utilized better for the benefit of everybody. So I hope that provides some value to the listeners.
I want to piggyback on what Dr. Jeff just talked about. And a lot of people know that I have these 3 things that I always want you to do in a situation. And it actually stems from when I was in college at Lewis and Clark College in Portland. There was a pool shark that used to come on tour every year, and he would challenge all the students to shoot pool and stuff. And someone asked in the audience, how do you know which ball to hit? And he says, after the break, I blueprint the table. And that stayed with me the entire time, all the way 40 something years later. Okay. I'm still looking at, how do you blueprint the table? How do you characterize the situation before you fix it? Okay. Too many people try to jump into a fix, and then they put as Dr. Jeff says, put the pressure on, then their anxiety level rises to the point where now I'm paralyzed. So characterizing the process before you fix it, characterizing the situation before you fix it. And that's number 1 on my list. Then number 2, and Jeff talked about the soft pressure, okay, is add structure only where necessary. Don't overkill things. Okay, so that's number 2. The soft pressure is adding structure only where necessary. You're not trying to be, I'm going to pick a shoulder and attack. That comes later. Okay, I'm a basketball coach, so you'll hear me with a lot of basketball analogies, but you'll have plenty of time to pick a shoulder and attack. Right now, you're just adding pressure. And what I tell my people that are adding pressure up the court, don't reach for the ball, okay? If you add subtle pressure, sooner or later, they're going to show it to you, and then you're going to take it, right? So that second piece, add structure only where necessary. And then the third piece, that's when you get the ball out of your court. You put the onus on the other team. You put the onus on the other people to show you something, okay? And when you do that consistently, you'll see that you'll find the vulnerabilities in the system. You'll find who's good. Your scouting reports will go up exponentially. And so I see that. And Dr. Jeff talks a lot about restraint. And if there's anything that I've learned over this last, over the pandemic, is the restraint that you have to show, the patience, the ability to ferret out opportunity within the crisis, because you're the only one that's showing restraint and everybody else is panicking. And it's been an interesting time in the pandemic, because I've done more in the pandemic than I normally would have done without the pandemic. I started a company called How to Make a Nation, because I had gone to Guatemala and Latin America and led study tours and did all those things. And I kept coming back feeling more empty each time, that I wasn't doing anything permanent for the people that were on the ground where I was going. It was like, is this, kind of poverty porn or something? Am I in here cleansing my conscience and then coming back? So I decided that I was going to take those same artisans that I had met on my trips to Latin America and see if I could finance them in business, and then create a company where I sold their wares around the world. And I have to say, we're in 4 continents now, including East Africa, India, Latin America, North America, Central America, or South America, Central America. And I've seen some just miraculous changes in the lives of people that I wouldn't even have attempted to do had it not been for a pandemic and me having the conscience to do something about it. And to talk to someone in Kenya, for example, that's working on genital mutilation of 9-year-old girls and early marriage of 14-year-old girls and things like that, and then being able to empower them to make enough money so they don't have to be sold into early marriage or something. I wouldn't have done that had it not been for the pandemic. And I started thinking about all the other things that has come true. I was saying at the top of the show that my kids were in town. I have 3, they're not kids, they're adult children. But I look at my eldest daughter, and she had 2 books published through, she's on Amazon. She's got a contract with Amazon, though they're the largest producer in the world, or a distributor in the world of books. And she's got 2 books, and one of them has been on the bestseller list probably for the last 6 months. And she's another one that when I talk to her about her business, she gives me back the advice that I gave her a long time ago and said, Dad, why aren't you doing this? It's like, this is what you taught me. And it's just been amazing to see that happen. My second daughter is at Stanford. In fact, both of them are at Stanford, getting her PhD in education. And now, since I'm an educator and I like to talk about education, she just kind of runs circles around me and said, I'm presenting a paper at this international conference here and there. And I'm just going, okay, well, now she's past me. And then there's my son, who's the rock star, that is the head of the Martial Law Band. Marshall is his first name. And, this has been an amazing year because he was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in music. Wasn't in the top 3, but still, it was a phenomenal thing. And then from that came the people that do TEDx asked him to do a TED Talk. And so he did a TED Talk in November, and along with some other things. But even what was greater is that on Christmas Day, we had a gala 2 days before Christmas where we collected a bunch of clothes, did a bunch of other things. But on Christmas Day, we went down to Pioneer Square in Seattle, place where a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness are. And we gave out food and clothes and just met a bunch of people down there. And that's probably the most fulfilling thing you can do, instead of sitting around the tree opening presents for myself. So when you see how fortunate you are, even in the pandemic, it is very difficult to just kind of pat yourself on the back all the time and say, hey, man, aren't I a great guy? And don't I do this and that? When you see all this need out there in the world, and you have to start thinking about living your message. And that's what's been every year I try to lead my life into a theme that I've picked out. And next year is going to be the theme. It's going to be the year of the Renaissance, meaning I want a revival and all the things that are positive, that are in my life, the things that I promised myself that I would do personally and the things that I would do professionally, but just decide that I'm no longer going to participate in learned helplessness. And I'm seeing so much learned helplessness all around me that it's just frustrating. I see people with amazing talent, but they've experienced so much either negativity or roadblocks, and now they're acquiescing to those. And that's the one thing that I want to show myself and anybody else who's involved with anything that I'm doing or in my orbit, that you don't have to give in to the learned helplessness that you see around you. And so I'll stop there, but to give Jeff
I want to, because I have a question that I want to ask Jeff, and I love that you use the word learned helplessness, because
it's beautiful.
I have a crypto community and a few projects, and anybody that, probably half the views, so 300, 400 people that are going to watch this have heard me say it a million times, because you cannot have, crypto is the anti-learned helplessness space. There's no refunds, there's no customer support, radical responsibility. And I don't have as much time with you, but I spend a lot of time with Jeff, and I just find myself echoing Jeff's words in a million different ways when people are demonstrating learned helplessness. And so all of my crypto projects are actually built around eliminating that, like helping people recognize, like, you have to be responsible for what you have to understand what you're doing, be responsible for what you're doing. Don't abdicate that responsibility to others. So I would love to just poke at Jeff a little bit, because I know he's got to jump in a minute. Just about some words of wisdom about recognizing maybe when we are abdicating responsibility to others, and when we're falling into this trap of learned helplessness.
Well, I think that's a natural state of human nature, is to do that. We all want to be taken care of, but actually domestication is the worst moment of your life. People think they want to get to the promised land, but I tell you, when you get there, that's when the decay starts to set in. If you look at the instincts that we're born with, most people don't realize that seeking is a human instinct. We're born and we're inbred. We have the genetic drive to be able to, the need to investigate. We're all born creators, and those people that don't live lives of productivity are usually some of the most unhappy people on the planet. So the thing that I would say about this is that I think advisors are really important to have in your life. You need coaches, you need mentors, you need cornermen, but do not engage them if you expect them to do your work for you. And more sessions isn't better. You want as few sessions as possible that give you the assignments to do to develop the confidence that you need to have in yourself, that you can learn anything at any time. It's just a matter of time. I had this experience with my mentor when I was 18 and he was 76. He was a true Renaissance man. That's why I had such a connection to Randy's 22 is going to be the year of Renaissance. I was feeling kind of sorry for myself one day, and he said, "You're having a bad day, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I haven't had many good ones, because I came from a welfare family. And so that has its challenges, of course." But he said to me, "Would you like a helping hand?" And I thought to myself, have you ever had that experience where a person kind of knows exactly what that to do that you needed that day, but there was no conversation about it? I thought to myself, how did he know that if there's every day I needed a helping hand, it was today? And I said, like, I don't know how to thank you for this, but I really, I don't know. I don't have the words to express my thanks for your offer to lend a helping hand. I accept. And he looked at me and he had these steely blue eyes, and he said, "If you want a helping hand, you got one at the end of each arm." And he turned around, he walked out of the room. And I got to tell you, at that moment, it was like, what? But all of a sudden I started to stand up just a little bit straighter. I felt different. I realized that he loved me enough to not get in the way of me having to face myself and having to find a way out of the predicament that I was in.
Can we talk
about a true expression of love, man? That was it.
Can we talk about that for just a minute before? Because I really want, like, the common response to that is, what a jerk. Right. And like, you don't understand, like, no, that is from somebody with that kind of wisdom and experience, that is kindness.
Yes. And I knew it because I stood up straighter. I didn't have relief. I stood up straighter. That was the evidence that I needed to feel and experience. That was the love that he extended to me. Like, I care enough about you, but I also trust you enough to know that you've got something inside of you that I can't take the place of because it would disable you. And so the other thing I wanted to say in this regard is that, you know, one of the things about the pandemic was that it was so ubiquitous in its impact, which is actually what you want. I would rather have a torrential downpour where you have a chance to rearrange everything in one moment at a time rather than to piecemeal things out over 5 years. So again, when you find yourself in significant difficulty, it's always much easier to rearrange everything like simultaneously. So what I would say there is that what I did learn is that as you start to acquire your skill, you be very clear about what you have the competency to engage and what you have the competency not to engage. And you always play it within the feasibility of what your current capacity enables you to do. Don't go out and try to move beyond what should be considered or believe that you have to prove something to anybody. You know, you start where you are, but surround yourself with really good people. I know that if I have a question, I know where I'm going to go. I'm going to call Randy. And if I need a question in another domain, I'm going to call Nick, because I have the trusted advisors. Jeff Moore, another example, you know, Dan Nicholson, another example, where we need to have this collection of trusted advisors that we know that will be there for us, but we have to exhaust every possibility within our capacity to try to solve the problem ourselves first. And if we can't solve it, don't try to solve it. Don't do it. Get good counsel first. And when we approach it in that way, there are plenty of people out there that will very gracefully and graciously give you everything that they have to help give you the confidence so that you can with confidence convert a personal challenge into a personal success to move up to the next level of competency. That's the most important thing that I could tell you. You don't need more sessions with an expert.
Right.
You need the expert to give you the significant challenge that you need to demonstrate the development of the capacity that's required next. When someone spends less time with you, they give you energy and time back. That is a gift. That's all I
Absolutely. Yeah, it amazes me that we have these parallel experiences. You know, when times I've wanted to absolutely give up. Okay. In fact, I say this, and I'm not joking. There's not been one thing that I've been lauded for that I didn't feel like quitting right in the middle of. Okay. It is everything that had just these huge challenges, and I just felt like I can't go on. And I can count on less than one hand the times I've quit something. Okay. It bothers me to this day on things that happened over 50 years ago that I stopped, or the fight got stopped, okay, before I got ahead. It still bothers me. The point, though, that he's talking about, okay, is that when you are down in despair and you want that helping hand, you want that leg up, you want somebody to carry you for a time. If you have within your being viscerally that, and I know there's too much emphasis on having a winning mentality and all those kinds of things, but if you feel inside that you have what it takes somewhere down there to change your circumstances or to do better, then what you need is that challenging person. What you need is that person that will give you that kick. I remember my daughter talking about how she was trying to sell her books and went to a conference in New York. And inside the ballroom where she was going to go do her pitch were all the top publishers and agents and stuff. And she was outside of the ballroom in tears, just paralyzed by her own fear and in tears and crying about it. And some of her support system, one of them in particular, came over to her and said, you are going in that ballroom and you are going to pitch your books. And you're going to come back out and tell us how good it was. Now go in there and do it. And needless to say, it obviously worked. Okay, that was in 2020 in June. Okay, less than 12 months later, she had a bestseller, and 9 out of the 9 people she talked to in that ballroom wanted to hear what she had to say, wanted to read her book, wanted to read her manuscript. See, if you don't have that person, okay, that's not going to let you off the hook when you feel bad, they still challenge you to go into that ballroom and show what you've got, okay, then you need to find that person. I see too many people, and I see it a lot. Gosh, I'm in the entertainment business, everybody trying to make it easier on somebody, making it the easiest way possible for you to succeed. You want to say something about that, Jeff? Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
I unfortunately have to jump. So just saying, just a great big, love and hug to you and your wisdom. And thanks, Randy, for everything that you do. There's never been a time when we haven't been together where I feel like I got the best deal in the house. Thanks again for sharing your wisdom. Big love for just a great year. And thanks again, Nick, to you and the crew.
Thank you. You'll be seeing me. Got some business down your way. I'll make sure I look you up.
Looking forward to it. All right. Big love, everybody. See ya.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. I didn't want to, I think he cut you off there if you want to keep going, but
no, I think they got the point.
There's one thing, there's 2 things I would like to ask from you if you have the time, just to wrap up this Nicsmas. The first is, I'll let you pick the order in which you want to do it, is I touched on something that I learned from you in the CCA in Nicsmas, which was, and I actually put it in a tweet today, scrutiny and expectation. And the reason it stands out to me is you said it one time, Dan and I talk about it all the time. And then we had the pleasure of seeing your son play at Dan's birthday. And he had such a great, even he talked about it, right? While in between songs, he just said, hey, let me talk about scrutiny and expectation. It's just such a powerful concept. So if you want to take a couple minutes on that. And then the other thing is the reason we are doing the CCA again is because Dan and I talked about it, you and Dan talked about it, and we're all just kind of stoked about what it is and what it represents. I'd love for you to share some of your motivations and why you're so generous with your time in helping put together the CCA and what it represents for Dan and for everybody that's part of it.
Okay, appreciate that. Let me talk to you about 2 tyrants, absolute tyrants that I've come to know over the years. And one's called scrutiny and the next one is expectations. And these things do not let you go when you're on the ascent as a leader or when you are leading a group of people, that everything you do comes under a microscope. That if there's a little tiny disconnect in what you say and what you do, they drive a wedge through it so that you can get a Mack truck through it. And so when you talk about scrutiny, you say, gosh, I can't say anything. I can't do anything. Somebody either acts on it or they call me on it, or I just don't have that luxury of just being, quote, one of the guys or one of the fellows or something like that. And once you realize that everything you do is under the microscope, then you stop being as cavalier with your words. Doesn't mean that you are so overly cautious that you're not yourself. Now, you still talk your stuff. You still go out and make sure that you get your point across your way. But what you're not doing, okay, is giving people false signals about who you are and what you're about. You're in that so that when they put you under that inevitable microscope, okay, that you come back consistent. Doesn't mean you're always going to make the best choices or that you never make a mistake, but you're consistent in approach to how you do things, and that ends up handling that scrutiny tyrant. Now, the second one is expectations. Expectations follow you everywhere you go in everything you do. And I tend to deal with very high achievers. And these achievers either got such good grades in school, and high school, and college, that if they get anything lower than an A or anything less than a 100%, then they think that they failed. I tell a story all the time. My second daughter, Coco, that's in the PhD program at Stanford, she went there for undergrad. In fact, that was the only school she applied to, which was weird. She said, I'm going to apply for early admit. And if I don't get in, then I'll think about applying to other places. But she got in. But anyway, I remember she went to the mailbox across the street from our house, looked in the mailbox, got an envelope out somehow, and started. Immediately, I started hearing her wail. She's letting out this loud scream. She's coming into the house crying and just kind of thought, what happened between here and the mailbox that would get you this worked up? And she looks at this paper she's holding in her hand, and she goes, I got an A minus. And she was crying, getting an A minus. I thought, man, I would have loved to get an A minus in something like chemistry or whatever it was. And I was in the half of the class that made the top half possible. So, but her expectation until then was to have straight A's, okay, and no A minuses. And that level of expectation was hamstringing her even when she got to college, and she had a crisis, and she called me, and it was like a paper or something that was due, or she couldn't turn it in right or something like that. And my advice to her was, stop worrying about getting good grades. Your true education is going to come outside of the classroom. And of course, I didn't know she'd take me to heart the way she did. It's like, okay, I'll stop thinking about that altogether. But did it hurt her? No, she's back at Stanford with a PhD. See, so the point of it is, you have expectations yourself, and other people have expectations of you. And when you fall short, now you think there's something wrong with you. And yet trial and error is the way to growth. And you have to have expectations, yes. But if you don't meet your expectations this time, then just turn around, regroup, go at it again. The formula, and Dr. Jeff talked about this, and this is real important. Okay, you engage whatever it is that you're doing. Okay, then you reflect on doing what you just did in that engagement, and then you engage again better. And sometimes we think that everything that we do, we only have one bite at the apple, and that life is so unforgiving that we end up chastising ourselves. It's like, hey, man, what's wrong with me? And it's nothing wrong with you. It's something's wrong with everybody having expectations of you, and that you taking their expectations and trying to live them out versus you being the standard. You set the standard. You are the calibration standard, and then you're going to push that further. So that's those tyrants. They stay on you all the time, and you're expected to win. And yet, the way you're going to deal with them is that you're going to train at a high enough level to where meeting the expectations or dealing with the scrutiny is a byproduct of what you do versus the driver for what you do.
That's way better than what I shared around scrutiny expectation. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I've had a little practice on both sides of that. And I continually put myself in situations where I have to grow, where I have to deal with the scrutiny and expectation. Otherwise, I would shrink back and not do it. And yet, that's the way that I get the drive or the impetus or the catalyst to go forward with the things that I'm able to do. Now, let me talk a little bit about CCA.
Yeah,
because,
please.
there are things in life that you get in to check it out, and it ends up checking you out. You get in to see what this is about and whether it's worthy of your time, and you find out that it's one of the most worthy things you've ever done. And that's the way I see in CCA. And there's like 3 components that I want to share that were so powerful. The first one is that we develop the intellectual horsepower of the participants. Okay, we're constantly reading, we're constantly sharpening each other, constantly putting big questions out there to explore so that you raise the level of your game. If I'm out during the week dealing with people who are at the 1/2 of 1 percentile in vocabulary or education or their financial status, and I'm learning from these people as I'm interacting, I think I can bring that in. I can bring that in to CCA on a Thursday, and for an hour and a half, 2 hours, an hour, share what I've learned and challenge other people to have what we call case in point, okay, which is the second thing that we do. And that case in point is to take something that you've learned the week before or earlier in the program and apply it directly to your life. And it is amazing to see people get a principle. Say we talk about characterize the process before you fix it, add structure only when necessary, and get the ball in your court. And they come back and they say, I had a situation at work where I did those 3 things and it worked perfectly. And there's nothing from a coach's standpoint, from a professor standpoint, there's nothing like it when the lights come on and it actually works. I mean, I've seen this in basketball practice where you work on a press break or something and another team presses you with their press and you break it just perfectly. It will bring tears to your eyes that the thing that you practiced actually worked. And so that's one that it was so important in this piece. And then the third piece is the technical training you get on the certainty process, certainty application, and how to go about applying that. And these principles, what you find is these principles are not monolithic. They go across the board to just about every endeavor that you involve yourself with. But the final thing, okay, is at the end, and I can't tell people what they're supposed to get out of CCA. It meets you at your point of need and you'll get out what you need to. We make that guarantee. But Dan asked if anyone wanted to say anything to me personally. And to see people with tears, thank you for something that you didn't even know that was going to be worth it in the beginning. It sticks with you. You can see it all the time. You carry that with you when you're having that day that nothing's going right. And you've got problems and all kinds. Just thinking back that this cohort of people stayed in there. They hung in there. They did the reading. They had the experiences. They had issues in their family and in their relationships and in their businesses. And they fought through that and stayed with it week after week, got what they needed, and continued to move on. And I said this, and I continue to say it because it continues to happen. I've never seen a person prepare and continue to prepare that didn't get a shot to use this in a very successful way. Never seen it. Okay. I've seen people give up in other endeavors and not, stay with it. I've seen people get a shot, but they didn't prepare themselves and not make it. Okay? I've never seen one that did the preparation and didn't get a shot to use the stuff. So anyway, that's about all I got.
I appreciate that, and I'll tell you, I'll just echo or kind of piggyback off. I've done a lot of coaching programs. I've been in a lot of them. I've been in a lot of different kind of programs. The practical application of the CCA is off the charts. It's the only thing that I've been a part of where every single week you're going, oh, you get it, and you applied it, and now you behave differently in a way that's going to get you closer to what you want. Where, we got a lot of programs, a lot of rhetoric, a lot of one-liners, a lot of people saying the same stuff and then acting totally ridiculous over here. It's just the ultimate. It just aligns all of these things. Most importantly, in my opinion, is the behavior. We saw it over time. Like, these are different people.
Absolutely. I there's a lot of executive education out there, and sometimes people will say, well, yeah, Randy, I like what you're talking about, but this program over here that I'm part of with some other CEOs and stuff like that. Now, I teach in a lot of those. Okay, I've taught in a lot of those in the executive leadership programs that are 60 to 80 to sometimes over $100,000 a year. Okay, these different places, and I say, go to those. Okay, they will give you the right books to read, and you'll get some articles. I'm going to give you the same books, the same articles. Okay, but I'm also going to give you a way to use it. And if you can digest this and metabolize it, make it part of yours. Don't leave it to me. Don't say it's mine. It's yours once I've taught it to you. That's the difference. I'm not trying to make you into Peter Drucker or some other kind of guru or something out there. You're going to use this and you're going to use it as yours and then come back and see how it worked. So I appreciate the opportunity, Nick, to jump on here anytime to talk to one of your audiences. I just live for the opportunity to interact with Jeff Spencer and kind of what he has to teach. And I just hope that I get a chance to meet some of these people at some point.
We got a handful of CCA people already got their deposits in. So looking forward to that. And Randy, thank you so much. I want to respect your time.
Okay.
We'll
appreciate you
when we chat. Yeah, likewise.
Okay.
All right. So 11:51, good timing. That means about 3.5 hours of Nicsmas. Pretty consistent number of people watching throughout the whole time. I'm sure it's different people cycling through. I don't know how many people will watch this whole replay. I really don't. It's a big ask. I'm gonna leave it up for a little bit. Please share your biggest takeaways. I don't care if you tweet them, post them on Facebook, smoke signals, messenger pigeon, comments on YouTube. It doesn't matter to me. You got to understand that it's not for marketing purposes. I don't care. That's why I don't care where you put it. There's what was said and there's what you heard. And when me and our guests can see what was heard, it can only benefit us, right? As people that are articulating ideas, help meet people where they're at, all that stuff. So I'm going to wrap it up right about now. Strongly implore anybody considering CCA. Randy is there every week. Jeff is there for a few weeks. Dan and I are there every week. This is really refining the thinking relative to closing the gap between where you're at and where you want to be. It's really like how to be an outrageously effective human. Identify what you want and get it. And it almost seems like it's way too easy. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but the work is in thinking accurately, not in like doing more hours of labor. So hopefully Nicsmas has been helpful to you. I will post some links. I'll recap everything we talked about. Some of them are in the description. I'm going to go walk my dogs, and I'm going to eat lunch, and I'm going to take a nap, and then I may push the PM session because a lot of people are having a hard time today, some of the guests. We may just push the PM session to that Thursday night boardroom and get everybody there for you. So I'll let you guys know. Might just fire up anyway, right? But we'll do something special for CCA advisors, people that have their deposit in and Nicsmas decentralized. thanks for hanging out for 3.5 hours. Appreciate you all. And like I said,